8 minutes.
That's not so good.
I've eaten worse. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, August 16th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher, and we are brought to you by OddsShopper. 13-game MLB slate on the docket. I think it's 13, actually. I haven't looked at a single thing for baseball quite yet. Crunch is running as we speak. 13. I was right anyway. I knew what was going on. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. As you get in the door, we'll run that number up. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, feel good to be back.
Yeah, it does. Feels good to be back. Just was out at the pool for like a half hour. It's like 75 degrees, perfect weather. So actually in a pretty good mood.
Yeah, it's
the
oddly
bald
nice
guy
here.
is talking shit about hair again.
What?
I said the bald guy in chat is once again talking shit about hair.
How do you know someone's bald in chat?
Because I know that El Negro Loco is bald.
Wow. Gotcha. I was just like, man, that's a really weird thing to know about one of these random people in our chat. I didn't realize it was less random. Oh, man. So you have a nice time off? Take a couple days?
Yeah.
Recharge the old batteries, so to speak?
Yeah. Didn't play too much DFS. Just played MMA on Saturday. Played baseball on Sunday.
MMA was all right. I'm going to miss this Saturday's card. I'm really not happy about it.
Yeah, I was thinking I was going to miss last Saturday's, but then since we were just chilling and hanging out in the sportsbook anyway, I was like, I'm going to go make lineups.
The only way that I'm going to be able to put anything in on Saturday is if the weather is rainy, because we're going camping. If it's set to just rain for most of the day, then I'm going to get the fuck away from camping and just go into town where there's internet and a bar, and I'll go ahead and run some lineups. But otherwise, I'm going to have like 4 straight days of no DFS, which will be fun for Thursday and Friday and probably give me the shakes by Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I feel like I would, regardless of weather, rather be going into town to go to the bar and play DFS.
Yeah. I've been playing so much more lately, grinding tennis each day. Learning it as we go. I enjoy it, at least. So that's been fun. Watched a little bit of it, actually, so that hasn't been bad. MMA, baseball, obviously. Had a good Saturday in baseball. It's been fun. And now we're back, and we're going to grind through 13 games. So I'm ready to start if you are.
Yep.
Kicking it off best way we can. Yankees and Rays. This one didn't work out the way that I wanted it to yesterday. 3.9 run implied total for the Yankees, 3.1 for the Rays. Nestor Cortez and Jeffrey Springs. Got some ownership coming in on the Cortez side. 23% owned at 9,900. He's the 4th most expensive pitcher on today's slate. How are you feeling about Cortez?
I mean, I think he looks good. It's a pretty solid matchup against Tampa Bay. One thing that stands out on this slate, there are several very good pitchers, but most of them don't have good matchups. So this is a pretty decent spot for Cortez. Doesn't have quite the same strikeout stuff as some of the other guys, but 26.8% strikeout percentage is 6th highest on the slate, 3.66 xFIP. Just looks like a good option. He's getting the 2nd most ownership on the slate, and I think that makes sense given that Robbie Ray is clearly number 1. But then, you have Cease, Verlander, Woodruff all in difficult matchups. It looks a little bit better for Cortez here.
I'm with you on that one. I think Cortez very clearly stand in that group. Like, I think Verlander is the best of the 10K guys. I think Cortez very clearly stands out at 9,900. And then Robbie Ray is obviously just not even remotely close to correct for today. Just looks exceptional at 9,500. We will get to him in a bit. Do you see any appeal to going to Springs today? Or is this too difficult of a matchup that you want to go there?
Yeah, I mean, the argument for him, I guess, would be that he's a good pitcher. He's getting virtually no ownership at 7,400. Both a good strikeout pitcher and a good actual pitcher. 26% strikeout percentage, 3.26 xFIP, only a 5% walk percentage. The issue, of course, is the matchup against the Yankees. He does have a good changeup that neutralizes right-handed bats pretty well. But in addition to the tough matchup against the Yankees, there's also some relatively inexpensive pitchers that aren't getting a ton of ownership that I think are just even a little bit easier to get to. Nick Pivetta being the one that I'm referring to mostly. So
yeah,
like I get the I get the tournament argument, like large field tournament argument for Springs, from an upside standpoint, but realistically, I just think I'm gonna have difficulty getting him in the lineups.
I cannot disagree. Let's talk top stacks then. And I don't think we have a huge discussion point here, whether it's the Yankees or the Rays. Neither team grades out all that well in our top stack tool, 21st and 25th between the two. Yankees getting a little bit of ownership, which is basically just Aaron Judge. Are you going to get to bats in this one, or is it just sort of too difficult? There's easier spots to get to otherwhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just easier spots to get to. Obviously, whenever the Yankees are low owned, they are a reasonable stack. And one thing about this slate in general, there's obviously a couple of spots that are preferable to the rest, and those teams are pulling the most ownership, talking about Toronto and the Cubs. But it's a slate with a lot of just really flat top stack percentages and pretty flat ownership across the board. The highest top stack percentage on FanDuel right now is 8%. The highest top stack percentage on DraftKings is 8.3%. So I don't think the opportunity cost is quite as high. Like, obviously there's 25 other teams, so there's opportunity cost there, but it's not like this is a Coors Field slate where you're saying, like, how am I going to get to the Yankees against a good pitcher when I have a team in Coors? It's not that kind of slate, but I still think there's enough teams that are just I'm going to get to before the Yankees or the Jays or Rays. I mean.
I think that's pretty reasonable. It's a tough sell for today. It's a weird slate. We haven't had this sort of balance in a while in the offensive side. Like Blue Jays at 5.1 run implied total is the high mark that I have right now. That's not all that crazy. They're the only team that I have over 5. Pitching outside of, like, if Robbie Ray were 10K today and you were able to knock that down to like 30% ownership, pitching ownership would be really flat. Like, this would be a very difficult slate with just like basically one tweak. I don't have anything else to say here though. Like, I don't have a ton of interest in the Yankees or the Rays.
Yeah, same here. I think it goes without saying, if you get to Aaron Judge, that's good, but there's also plenty of other really good outfield plays.
Nats and Cubs, 3.8 run implied total for the Nats, 4.8 for the Cubs. Patrick Corbin and Justin Steele. No one's going to Corbin at 5,800, just 2% owned. Steele, on the other hand, 6,200, pulling 15% ownership. Not all that surprising because the Nationals are not very good. How do you feel about Steele as a paydown option?
I think that it makes sense just because he's in a completely different price range than these like 7 to 8K pitchers. And like you said, the Nats are a below average offense. Not a ton of strikeouts in that lineup. And Justin Steele is not nearly as good at striking out right-handed hitters as he is left-handed hitters. And you're getting an entirely right-handed lineup with the exception of CJ Abrams. But at 6,200, Steele's just a more talented pitcher than that. He overall has a 23.7% strikeout percentage this year, 3.55 xFIP, 0.6 home runs per 9. He's another guy that should be like 7,500 instead of 6,200. So completely understand why he's getting that ownership.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense. I mean,
Honestly,
basically anybody
should be getting a little bit more.
Anybody that's facing the Nats at this point in time is just going to sort of look good by default. They are not a good team right now.
Yeah, and like the reason I say that I think Steele maybe should be getting even more is when you look at the top pitchers tool, you have him with a 9% chance of being top 2, Plesac at 9.5. Quintana at 10, Gray at 10.5. But from a value standpoint, Steele's got a 19% chance of being a top 2 value. Plesac's at 12%, Quintana's at 9%, 8.5%. So considering how similar their top 2 pitcher percentages are, I think there's a good chance I end up just playing more Steele because of the value.
I mean, I think that makes sense. Why is his ownership so low? We'll get to it when we get to it. I don't have anything else on Steele. We definitely need to talk bats here. Number 1 in our top stack tool, 9th in top value, number 1 in public ownership. That would be the Chicago Cubs. Do you see the Cubs as the number 1 stack up here against Corbin?
Yeah, and if not, I mean, I think it's between them and Toronto, but I lean the Cubs. So the one thing I keep pointing out with Corbin, because I just feel like it's necessary, is his underlying numbers are not as bad as his actual numbers. He has a 7.02 ERA this year, only a 4.14 xFIP. 384 BABIP is insanely unlucky for the pitcher. I don't care who it is. 61.7% left on base percentage is also insanely unlucky. But at the same time, still only a 19% strikeout percentage, 1.7 home runs per 9, 229 expected ISO to right-handed hitters this year, 391 expected WOBA. In no way is this guy good. It's just he's not as bad as I think people make it out to be. Like the fact that he's getting paid, I think he's got like the 9th highest pitcher salary in baseball, has kind of just like pushed the narrative to like meme status, I think, where he's bad, but not quite as bad as his real numbers. But an entirely right-handed lineup here for the Cubs, and plenty of power in it as well, in addition to some value. Nick Madrigal leading off again, second base eligible at 2,500, looks like a great value. Cash option, tournament option, everything. Contreras is really expensive, so is Wisdom, but they both have plenty of power from the right side. They both look good. Wisdom has multi-position eligibility on DraftKings. Contreras is a catcher where we know it's hard to fill that spot with power. Suzuki's reasonably priced. Reyes is 2,800. He's got massive strikeout issues, but Patrick Corbin's not likely to be able to take advantage of those. So that looks like a great value as well. Horner looks like a good mid-range shortstop option. Then you get more value with Nelson Velasquez, who projects to be a solid power hitter. 203 ISO at AAA this year. Steamer has him with a 190 ISO projection going forward. Christopher Morel is really expensive, batting 9th. That's the only one where like I probably don't get much of that, just because it's outside of like trying to just find the contrarian bat. But yeah, it's just kind of top to bottom in this lineup. I think that you can make a strong case for like every player.
Yeah, I think they grade out pretty well. I am getting to them, but not as much as the public. I have about 5% in the aggregate, but 7% of my stacks. So just a hair behind that, like 10% ownership mark. I feel comfortable there. I like the spot, but I don't think it's a crazy, crazy good spot. I definitely don't like the Nats on the opposite side.
You don't think it's a crazy good spot in terms of like when you factor in ownership or in general?
No, like the way that you detailed out Corbin, I don't think he's as bad as it seems when you just like look at it at the surface, where you think, oh, I'm just going to load up on this guy. He's basically become, it's not going to be the best comp now because of how it went, but the way that people would talk about Andrew Wiggins because his contract was really high, and then like now it looks different because he went to Golden State, but just because somebody's
Wiggins
overpriced,
also was never as bad at basketball as Corbin is right now at pitching.
True, very true. But people thought it because he wasn't playing up to his salary. Like, I think people would not talk about it as much if Corbin just simply made less money, even though he'd be the exact same pitcher on the field.
Right. If Corbin made less money, nobody would talk about him because he's just a pitcher for the Nats, who are a shitty team, and it would be like, oh, damn, Patrick Corbin fell off. Like, that would be all that anybody said.
Yeah, so either way, clearly a great spot for the Cubs. I love the implied run total. I mean, we're going to see 9 righties against Corbin. Park's good for right-handed power. All that stuff fits pretty well. Might be a little higher in ownership than I want to see, but that's really splitting hairs here. They look good. Nats don't.
Yeah, the Nats do not. You have a cheap Victor Robles leading off. Luke Voit, Nelson Cruz. I mean, they're cheap. There's that, but yeah, I just have a really difficult time wanting to get to them.
I agree. They are 11th in aggregate ownership, by the way, and they're basically pulling that because they're free 3rd in our top stack or our top value metric. Cash options on the Cubs side, obviously Judge would be a reasonable option in the Yankee side. I didn't ask for anybody else, but what are you seeing here? Franmil Reyes?
Madrigal, Contreras, possibly if you're able to pay up a catcher. I haven't built a lineup yet, so I'm not sure. But if I am paying up, I assume that's where I would go. Madrigal for sure is a top second base option. Suzuki is certainly viable. Reyes, I would think, is in there. Wisdom is viable as well. I just kind of assume that you're going to end up somewhere else.
Sure. Ramirez. No options on the Nats side. I can feel pretty comfortable there, unless they get Soto back somehow.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything from the Nats side. SMP said, am I an insane person for liking Corbin as leverage? I mean, yes and no. It's baseball, so you're never really insane for liking any starting pitcher that's relatively cheap and stretched out. But from like the leverage argument, 90% of the field still isn't going to be on the Cubs. So it's kind of just like, even if Corbin, like, it's the argument you would make for Corbin is just that he's not going to be owned, and he's going to, if he pitches well, that helps you. If the Cubs don't do anything, that's kind of whatever. It's still 90% of the field is somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, really, all we're talking about at the bottom now is, do you like somebody as much as the public likes Justin Steele? That's really all that it is at the bottom, because no one else is getting any ownership. So, I don't think that I have anything else here for this one. Yeah, we'll keep it moving. So far, so good. This is easy slate at this point. Pirates and Red Sox. 3.9 run implied total for the Pirates, 4.5 for the Red Sox. Mitch Keller and Nick Pivetta. No ownership going to Keller. He is 6,500 on DraftKings. No real ownership going to Pivetta either. He is 8K, just 4.5% owned. Love the park from a power perspective if you're trying to get a pitcher. How much Pivetta do you want?
So, I misunderstood what you said. Yeah, so I think that Pavetta's ownership is weird to me. Like, on the one hand, I understand why Steele's getting more. I understand that Plesac's facing the Tigers. Quintana's facing the Rockies outside of Coors. But, like, are Quintana and Plesac really that much better than Nick Pivetta? This is a good matchup for him. It's a good park to pitch in. 22.5% strikeout percentage, 4.19 xFIP. You compare that to Quintana, 21.3% strikeout percentage, 3.69 xFIP. So sure, he's a little bit better. You compare it to Plesac, 18.2% strikeout percentage, 4.34 xFIP. So there, you're basically just saying that the $800 difference between Pivetta and Plesac is worth like all of that ownership because they both have good matchups. So that's kind of a weird spot to me where I don't think Pivetta is getting quite as much ownership as he probably should, given that it is a good park to pitch in. It's going to help neutralize power. He does have decent enough strikeout stuff, and the pitchers in this price range that are getting ownership really aren't that much better than him, or if they're better at all.
No, like I have Quintana by 0.2 of a point. I have Plesac by 0.4 of a point. Like clearly we're stepping down in salary slightly, but for all intents and purposes here, these are all the exact same guy. They should not have giant disparities in ownership.
Agreed.
The idea of Plesac being 21% and Pivetta being 4.5 is just, to me, not like I don't need the salary that bad. So I'm with you. I think he is very underrepresented today. Is Mitch Keller underrepresented?
As far as, I mean, he has a 4% chance of being top 2 and 1% ownership, but he's just another guy that I kind of doubt that I get to. Boston is a good enough offense, even though they certainly have some weak spots in their lineup. I don't anticipate really needing to get to Keller here. He's been okay in terms of run prevention with a 3.99 xFIP, but only about an 18.5% strikeout percentage this year. And, again, you're, I think, going to have Kike Hernandez back in the lineup for Boston. Hosmer's not a good hitter, but he doesn't strike out a ton. Devers, Bogarts, Verdugo, Martinez are all fine. Anywhere between fine and extremely good in the case of Devers. So it's a spot where I don't really think I'd end up getting the Keller.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them at a 113 aggregate WRC plus, a 19% K rate, which is as low as it really gets on any sort of slate. This is not a good strikeout matchup, and it's not like Keller is some guy that just misses bats at a crazy rate. So I don't really see any appeal here. Talk to me a bit about the Red Sox bats. 3rd in our top stack tool, 7th in top value, 4th in ownership at this mark. And most of that ownership is Rafael Devers. Only Alex Verdugo at 12% is the other guy in double digits. Talk to me about Boston.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think that like if you're just looking at the top stacks tool and looking at the ownership versus top stack, I kind of have a hard time explaining like why Boston is popular here, but you did it with, Devers getting the bulk of the ownership at 5,600. He clearly looks really good in this spot. It is a park downgrade for them. And like I said, Keller has been decent at limiting power. So I think that the Red Sox are just one of a lot of offenses that just kind of looked the same to me. I'm a little surprised that we have their top stack percentage like so much higher than Seattle and Atlanta and Minnesota. I kind of think they should all be closer together, but yeah, they look fine. Devers is certainly on the short list of third base cash options. Verdugo's cheap. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably just get around the field, if not a little bit less.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less right now. Seems like just an easier spot to sort of pick a different team that isn't getting any love. It's the same way that yesterday worked out for me. That didn't work at all because the Braves broke the slate. But I just had a lot of these like 3% owned teams that nobody was getting to, and everything just looked the same. And today, everything just looks the same. It feels like it's pretty easy to just sort of zig while everybody else zags.
Yep.
What about the Pirates, who are not unowned? 9th in ownership right now at 5.5% in the aggregate. They are 19th in our top stack tool, but 5th in our top value. Do you want to try to target the Pirates at all? Doesn't really feel like the best spot, and it's not like Pivetta is getting any ownership to give you any sort of additional boost.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best spot, but I do kind of like the value here. Pivetta does give up some power, as I said, and this park does help to mitigate it. But a 185 expected ISO to righties, 169 to lefties this year. You do have some decent pricing with Brian Reynolds at 4K. He's hitting third. O'Neill Cruz is 3,900. Unfortunately, he's hitting sixth. You have a 2K leadoff hitter with multi-position eligibility in Marcano. It's a lineup where like you have enough cheap hitters that at least have some semblance of upside that I can see the case for them. But I think there is a value stack that I will get to more often in Oakland, which is terrifying to say. And I just don't really like this park. And I think that when I do get the value stacks, it's more likely I get to Oakland.
I think that's, well, I don't know if I think that Oakland is reasonable, but given their implied total and what's going on today, I think they finally put themselves in a situation where they can be rostered because they generally just look awful. So yeah. I got nothing else here. Obviously, Devers is on a short list of potential cash options. Do you see anybody else that's working their way there, whether that's Verdugo or Brian Reynolds or O'Neill Cruz?
It could be Verdugo at 3K. I do think he probably is behind Franmil Reyes at 2,800 amongst the cheap outfielders.
Okay. But just so everybody knows, because not everybody watches every day, and I'm going to go hit that super chat in a second. Devers is just basically permanently an option.
Yep.
There we go. I do want to hit on that super chat from Teddy Wayman. He said, "What's up, guys? Just wanted to say I listen every day, even though I don't play MLB. Can't wait for NBA. Welcome to my world, my friend. Appreciate you being here. That's awesome that you just watched to come and hang out with us. But yeah, I already put the date on the calendar for the first day of NBA season. Did you see the good news? We get a free day off during the NBA season.
What?
No NBA games on election day in November for the midterms. So free day off. It's a Tuesday, which is pretty annoying because there's not a lot of utility in having a Tuesday off, but I am not one to be mad at.
Move that to a Friday.
Yeah, not mad about it. Yeah, we should absolutely be voting on a Monday or a Friday to create 3-day weekend situations. Yep. But yeah, I was pumped to see that earlier today. All right, folks. Schedule for the rest of the day, pretty easy. Live before lock coming up next, 6 p.m. till 7:05. And I'm going to promote myself here for a second. Go back and watch the PGA Strategy Show. Myself and Ben Raza broke down the BMW Championship for this weekend. Free content for today. We're going to talk about it through every single team that we bring up on this show. Our MLB Top Stacks tool is free. I personally think it's the best tool that we have on the site. I think it was the first top whatever tool that we ended up posting, and it really changed everything about the way that I play MLB DFS. Having those stack ratings was massive. Led me to create my own as well because I can't help myself. I got to try and do everything that I see on our website. And yeah, if you don't want to do that, you can go directly to our Top Stacks tool and just simply use it. It's fantastic. Blue Jays and your Orioles. Orioles were looking pretty good yesterday until the Braves just went absolutely insane. 5.1 run implied total for the Blue Jays is the highest mark on the slate. 3.6 run implied total for the Orioles. Alek Manoah and Dean Kremer going here. We're not rastering Kramer at all. So let's talk Alek Manoah. 12.5% owned, 9,200. I think he's going a little under owned here.
I think he's about where he should be. The issue with Manoah is that he doesn't have the same sort of strikeout stuff as like every pitcher priced above him. He only has about a 22.5% strikeout percentage this year. He has pretty drastic splits against righties and lefties. There are five lefties in the top 6 for the Orioles with Mullins, Rutschman, Santander, Vavra, and Odor. 4 of them are average plus hitters. Odor is not. The one benefit to this lineup is instead of Austin Hayes, you have Ryan McKenna. McKenna is batting 9th, but that's essentially a free strikeout from Manoah. But only a 16.7% strikeout percentage and a 343 expected WOBA against lefties for him, compared to a 29% strikeout percentage and 231 expected WOBA against righties. So it does set up as a spot where maybe he does have some trouble picking up strikeouts. But also from an ownership standpoint, you just have so many pitchers in that like 7 to 8K range plus Justin Steele at 6,200, where I have a hard time thinking that I'm going to get substantially more Manoah than 12-13%.
He's a guy that I actually have double the field of right now. So I've got 23 coming in. And I think a lot of it has to do with he's sort of the floor of the pay up options. Robbie Ray complicates matters at 9,500, but after Manoah, I have a pretty clean line drawn where I don't have anybody else projected even close to him.
Yeah, so like,
and I think that's creating like a sort of a choke point.
yeah, and that's where I'm pretty different. Like even looking at our projections, we have Sonny Gray like just slightly behind them. We have less than a point difference between Manoah and Quintana, between Manoah and Plesac, between Manoah. We have like just over a point difference between Manoah and Steele.
Okay. Yeah, so I have Manoah at 19-2.
That would be the second highest pitcher that we have projected behind Robbie Ray.
Oh, see, I have Verlander ahead of that mark. I have Cortez ahead of that mark. Obviously, I have Robbie Ray ahead of that mark by quite a bit. But yeah, like I have Ray, or I have Manoah looking like Cortez, which sort of makes sense to me. Like I think it's a decent strikeout matchup, at least at the bottom. The Orioles offense is definitely worse than the Rays offense, at least this lineup that I'm looking at right now.
It's not.
You think the Orioles offense is better than the Rays offense?
Yes. Not looking at any numbers, just looking at the names. Absolutely.
You're crazy. I mean, I would expect you to like that.
I mean,
Jordan, put the poll up. Whose offense is better, Orioles or Rays?
What?
You're going to win this one because people will want to be against me. So,
I mean, I assume you're looking at some sort of aggregate, and yes. I can guarantee Ryan McKenna is pulling it down drastically. Rougned Odor is pulling it down a lot. Mullins is above average. Rutschman is above average. Santander is above average. Mountcastle is above average. Vavra is at least average. Urias is average. Mateo is below average overall, but has some power. Odor is below average, and McKenna is absolute dog shit.
You explained it perfectly. I can't even argue with any of your takes.
There are more above average hitters in the Orioles lineup than the Tampa lineup. The bottom of the Orioles lineup is bad, but the bottom of the Tampa lineup is Walls, Chang, and Quinn. So that's not really helping them either.
Walls, Chang, and Quinn is Odor, Mateo, McKenna, basically.
Right.
Yeah. I got to
absolutely take.
Steamer has it at 111 Rays, 102 Orioles.
That's insane.
You know I'm an Orioles hater, though, so.
Yeah, I mean.
It's so easy. And now I have to cheer against Siege's futures, so it's really a rough go of it.
I kind of do, too, because the only reason he has those futures is because I was DMing him talking up the Orioles, and he just made a bunch of bets on the Orioles.
They look good now, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think he already cashed some out for, like, substantial profit.
Yeah, I was going to... Not that we have that kind of time, but, like, I saw two of them that were pretty sizable. I would probably cash out a chunk of one and that one chill and just see if it improves.
Yeah. Because
it's either World Series or like win the AL or something like that. So
yeah, I think it was like to win the AL.
Yeah, that's still a long shot, even if you got it at whatever the odds are now. Oh, we got the poll. Yeah, as I expected, 80-20 Orioles Rays. So like in most things, the 20% is what we're really looking for. So 20% of the people in here, in my opinion, smart. That's all I got. Let's talk about the best bats in this game. That would be the Toronto Blue Jays, the third in top stack tool, second in ownership. There's no value here. They are 19th, but I think that's totally fine. I'm heavy on the Blue Jays, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, completely agree. Kramer's kind of been up and down this year, but certainly one of the weaker pitchers on the slate. And then also looking at his splits so far, only a little over 1,000 pitches thrown total this season, but 521 to righties, 505 to lefties. Only a 12.9% strikeout percentage against righties compared to 24.6% against lefties. 217 expected ISO, 361 expected WOBA to righties. You're getting, as usual, a very right-handed heavy Toronto lineup. Everybody in it is right-handed except for Jackie Bradley, and tons of power. Springer, Gurriel, Guerrero, Kirk, Chapman, Hernandez, Bo Bichette. I saw somebody in chat. Bo Bichette hitting 7th. Just ridiculous embarrassment of riches for this team. They're not in Baltimore either, so you don't have the 380-foot mini green monster knocking down home runs to left field. It looks like a great spot for Toronto.
All righty. Does it look like a great spot for your Orioles?
No, I mean, like I said, Manoah struggles with lefties, and you do have a left-handed heavy 1 through 6. But I think it's pretty difficult to get to them, especially when Santander, Rutschman, and Mullins are all expensive as well. And the thing with Manoah, like even his struggles against lefties, it's not tons of production. It's just lack of strikeouts. Still only a 149 expected ISO, 343 expected WOBA. It's not like he's one of these pitchers that's just like he's not Josiah Gray going out there and striking out every right-handed hitter and giving up a home run to every left-handed hitter.
That was really irritating yesterday as someone that didn't have Gray, but it
I
didn't
had
matter.
tons of Gray and no Hap.
I had tons of Hap and no Braves, so nothing mattered. I looked at that yesterday. I looked at it this morning on the process, and it was basically just every lineup you can find as you scroll down in lineup study was just like 5-man Brave stack, 5-man Brave stack, and you hit like one random asshole one-off that didn't stack at all, and just like basically hit the semi nuts of one-offs in 8 separate games. But other than that, you didn't have a choice. They doubled up the second highest scoring team, so that's what's going to happen. Cash options here: Vlad Guerrero, obviously; Kirk, obviously; Springer, I'm sure you'd be totally okay with if it happened.
Anybody 1 through like 7.
Everybody that isn't Jackie Bradley, come on.
Yeah,
down.
basically.
I mean, you don't want Espinal, but like Jackie Bradley is uniquely shitty.
Yeah.
You would think that Jackie Bradley Sr. had some like really high level talent or something like that, because Jackie Bradley should not be getting any chances any longer.
He's elite defensively.
But he is, what's the opposite of elite offensively?
Hitting 9th.
Yeah, he should be hitting 9th for like a AA team.
I mean, he's for sure still a major league like 4th outfielder.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, maybe that's not fair.
Just somebody.
Dude, 2021. Do you know what his WRC plus was in 2021? Last year, 428 plate appearances. Don't look.
78.
35.
That is.
Is he still a 4th outfielder, man? By the way, this year he's up to an illustrious 59.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody. If you have the spot, if you're a winning team and you have the open spot to just let him play the outfield in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning of leads, then yes, he's valuable.
Also, not that I'm trying to like argue with you for this. His defensive like metrics are down considerably from a couple years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Last year, 163, 236, 261 slash line. When I saw his WRC plus, I just assumed that it was going to be like, oh, in 87 plate appearances. Right. 428 is a lot of bad. He gave back 33 runs offensively. He was worth negative 1.6 wins.
That's
woof. Guardians and Tigers. God, he'd be decent on the Tigers. 4.6 run implied total for the Guardians, 3.2 for the Tigers. Zach Plesac and Garrett Hill. Plesac, heavily owned here, 21% at 7,200. Shouldn't be all that surprising. The Tigers aren't very good. It's a decent strikeout matchup, but does Plesac deserve this kind of ownership on today's slate?
Yes. He's facing the Tigers. He's just a middle-of-the-road pitcher. He's cheap. So, like, I think the ownership makes sense. He projects well. We have him in line, basically, with Quintana and Steele. So I agree with the ownership. It's just he's not very good. Right. He has an 18% strikeout percentage this year, 4.34 xFIP, 1.18 home runs per 9. So I expect to get plenty of Plesac. I do actually have some interest in the other side, though. Like, if you are looking for a value stack and you want some negative leverage on the field, he gives up power. He's not very good. The Tigers are pretty cheap. They're also not good, but you know, I think that if you're only picking one side, it's pretty clearly Plesac here. But I don't hate getting into some Tigers bats either.
I just feel like the letdown here at 20% ownership is so high. I mean, he's got to thread like a pretty good needle to be good today. I don't know. I don't like it. So this is one of my bigger fades. I don't think that the people around him are so significantly when Jeffrey Springs succeeds, we know why he's succeeding. Whereas like Plesac just sort of needs to be like pretty lucky with balls in play.
Yeah,
I love that at 21% ownership.
Strikeouts against the Tigers, but
Can he?
Everybody can.
5 strikeout prop on Prize Picks for Plesac is certainly higher than I have him projected for. I would take that under. But at the same time, like, I understand why he's getting that ownership. On a point per dollar play at 7,200 against the Tigers, if you are a guy that gets starter level innings, you look good here. 20% feels a little healthy. Garrett Hill doesn't feel like somebody I want to get to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
All righty. Let's talk first about the Guardians. 8th in our top stack tool at 4%, 6th in ownership. That is going to be very deceiving because 18% ownership is going to Jose Ramirez. No one else is above 9. How do you feel about Cleveland as a stack here against Hill?
I think they look pretty good. They're one of the offenses that are kind of difficult to talk about when I like them because they're not really exciting outside of Jose Ramirez, but he's clearly really good. He's one of the top third base options. Throw him up with Devers as somebody that is always one of the top cash options at third base. Rosario gives you power and speed. Kwan is mid-range in salary. He's going to put the ball in play. Gonzalez has some power and he's cheap. Jimenez has some power. He's relatively expensive, but a second baseman. So I was hoping we were going to get Nolan Jones in the lineup, and we didn't. But it's still, I think, just a pretty good spot against Hill. He, in the minors, posted really big strikeout numbers, but that hasn't translated in his limited time in the majors so far. Most projection systems don't expect it to either. 322 total pitches to righties, 293 to lefties this year, 151 expected ISO to lefties, 257 to righties with a 412 expected WOBA. He just doesn't appear to be to be somebody that has it at the major league level. He averages 91 miles an hour on his fastball, but he's not getting swings and misses on his secondaries either, which really stands out. 104 sliders thrown to righties this year, 7.7% swinging strike percentage. That's an insanely bad number on same-handed sliders. 65 changeups thrown to lefties, 6.2% swinging strike percentage. He just isn't showing anything that is playing at the major league level so far.
No, not so much. Are the Tigers bats playing at the major league level? You sort of mentioned them before. They are second in our top value metric. They are clearly not second in top stacks, but they are unowned and essentially free against a 20% owned pitcher.
Yeah, so they're a little bit more appealing than normal here too, because obviously they have Riley Green. He's been up for a while. He's 3,900. Victor Reyes hitting second at 2K. That's clearly a good value. Javi Baez at 4,300 against a pitcher that doesn't get strikeouts. That's pretty appealing because, I mean, Baez will still probably find a way, but likely to put the ball in play. Kerry Carpenter hitting 5th, 2K flat. This is a spot where I'm like looking at his rest of season projections from most sites, and they just make absolutely no sense to me. 112 games at Double A last year, 171 ISO. This year, 63 games at Double A, 342 ISO. 34 games at AAA, 314 ISO. Zips projects him for a 147 ISO. The bat projects him for 139. I have no idea like how that happens. Steamer has him at 205. That makes more sense to me. FGDC is at 176. That probably makes the most sense. But point being, I think it's fair to say this guy's got enough power to be a 2K value option against Zach Plesac. So, you know, it makes him look good. Scope 2,300 at second base is a solid value. Your boy Candelario hitting 7th at 2,600. It's a little bit easier to get excited about the current Tigers lineup than it is some of the other ones they've rolled out this year.
Well, I don't know if excited is the right word, but they're more playable than they normally are.
Right.
Because I'm still not excited to play this Tigers team, who are basically all 2K except for Riley Green and Javi Baez.
This is for sure going to talk him into a home run, but this team would be more appealing if their 4-hitter in 1,079 career Major League plate appearances. What do you think Harold Castro's ISO is?
101.
0.093.
Good God.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea.
Noted middle of the lineup masher, Harold Castro.
Right. Like, I understand that there's limited options here, but Carpenter, Scope, Candelario, Badu, like any of these guys.
Yeah. I mean, he's the worst option.
Right.
Outside of maybe Tucker Barnhart, but like we all know to not worry about, like, he's a catcher. That's a different scenario.
Yeah. I mean, Akil Badu, 580 career plate appearances, 148 ISO, makes him look like Babe Ruth.
Even drunk Babe Ruth.
Right.
Anything else here? Guardians and
Silver
Tigers.
favorite?
I don't know. That's a good point.
No, I just talked up the Tigers way more than I think I ever have.
Well, let's talk about OddsShopper now. We can talk that up because that's way better than the Tigers. It is a completely free tool for you guys to be able to bet on games at the best possible number you can find. So you can shop around for lines. You're not going to have to worry about getting a bad line. Everything will be in front of you. If you're in a legal state, you'll browse through those games. You'll find the best line. If you're not betting the best available line to you when you're putting in a bet, you're just simply costing yourself money. It's like paying interest for no reason whatsoever. Just don't do it. Take the best line that you can find and get your bet in. Now, if you really want something interesting, head on over to the player props pages on OddsShopper. That's where we're going to give you the projections, the expected ROI, the expected win rate, all for free. It's just there. It's going to cost you an email address during your sign up. I don't think that's a huge barrier of entry for you. So if you have the ability, if you are in a legal state right now, a legal state, not an illegal state, that's very difficult to say so you guys can understand what's coming out of my mouth. If you are in a legal betting state, OddsShopper is going to be the best thing that you could use for shopping around for lines and getting the best possible number. And if you're not in a legal betting state, I still think that this tool will help you out dramatically for playing DFS, taking a look at some player props, getting an idea. If you got a 1v1 you don't know what to do with, taking a look at like home run props and hit props, those sorts of things might help lead you in the proper direction. So OddsShopper will certainly help you out with that. All right, this one's the most interesting one for me right now. Braves and Mets. 4.8 run implied total for the Braves, 4 for the Mets. Charlie Morton, Taijuan Walker. Walker getting no love at 8,200. Charlie Morton getting no love at 8,500. Should Charlie Morton be getting some ownership here?
Wait, he was like 20% this morning. Where'd he go? Yeah, it's a messed up top pitchers tool.
Okay, well that makes a little bit more sense because I had 20% Charlie Morton at no ownership, and I was kind of curious why.
We have him with a 0% chance of being top 2 right now.
Well, that's clearly incorrect, so that's perfect. Well, then talk to me about Morton then. How do you feel about him if he's 20% owned? Because then I'm more nervous.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised this morning that he was 20%, just because it seems like we've gotten a lot of slates recently where Morton's in this price range in a pretty difficult matchup, and he comes in like low to mid teens. But I think I think he should be getting some ownership here, just because a lot of the good pitchers on this slate have difficult matchups. So that drives down the opportunity cost a bit. He has a 27% strikeout percentage this year, which is 4th highest on the slate behind Cease, Woodruff, and Ray. And those guys are all plenty, a lot more expensive than him. So I do think he should be getting ownership here. I think somewhere in the 15 to 20% range makes sense. Okay.
That feels a little bit better now. Was incredibly problematic when I looked at it because I just clicked refresh and was like, okay, well, I've got Charlie Morton in everything, and I'm really curious to see where this is going to go. Now, if I put 17% in ownership wise for Charlie Morton, I will be under the field on that mark now that I know it. But that's how ownership works for me. I don't imagine you want Taijuan Walker.
I'm guessing it has to do with the Mets scratched Escobar, and I'm guessing when we updated, we somehow messed that up.
Marrero doesn't have a salary in the Mets lineup, and I'm guessing that's causing the issue.
Yeah, that seems likely.
You don't want Walker, right?
No, not particularly. 8,200 on some slates, I think you could get there, but it's more likely I just end up playing more of the guys that are a little bit cheaper.
They were the very clear top stack yesterday. They are 5th in our top stack tool today, 3rd in aggregate ownership. A lot of that is going to Acuna, but Swanson at 12%, d'Arnaud at 12%. It's not like these guys are unowned. How do you feel about Atlanta?
I like Atlanta here because I think that there are still just a lot of ways you can attack this lineup outside of the popular pieces. Acuna at 5,400 certainly should be popular. 2,900 for Travis d'Arnaud hitting 5th. He certainly should be popular. And same goes for Swanson at 4,800. But like, for example, at catcher, if you play William Contreras over d'Arnaud, yeah, it's not as good a value play, but you're getting half the ownership. Vaughn Grisham at 2K flat has some power and stolen base upside, only getting 5% ownership. Michael Harris only getting 2% ownership. Robbie Grossman's cheap at 1%. Olsen and Riley both around 8%. Very reasonable price, reasonable ownership percentages as well. Walker's not a bad pitcher, but this Braves lineup has tons and tons of power. And I've kind of mentioned the inverse of it so far, that a lot of the really good pitchers on this slate are facing really good offenses. That makes Atlanta look a little bit better too, because when you think about the offenses that have similar power upside, you have the Yankees facing Springs, who he's not in the same category as Verlander and Cease, but he's still good. You have the Astros against Cease. You have the Dodgers against Woodruff. The matchup here is, I think, pretty solid relatively for Atlanta.
Yeah, I think I have more Atlanta today than I did yesterday. I've got about 5% in the aggregate, and I'm happy there. Don't have too much else to add. Like, Walker's a perfectly acceptable pitcher, so it's not like a guy that I'm trying to aggressively target. Ownership is just sort of already there, so I want to have some Braves. I don't want to have some Mets. Very, very costly stack.
Yeah, that's where I was too. I know Greg wanted to get to them this morning, and I understood his argument about the Mets are good and they're not getting any ownership. But when I think about what those lineups are going to look like, I think I'm probably just giving up too much to get there when there's no cheap way of getting to this team. The only player in the player pool below $4,600 or $4,200 on DraftKings is Michael Perez, hitting ninth as a $2,300 catcher. They're just all expensive. You can't play the 4 and 5 hitters together with Alonso and Vogelbach both at first base. Morton is a good pitcher. There's plenty of low-owned teams I can get to today, low enough owned teams, that I don't need to give up quality pitching and or one-offs just to get to a low-owned Mets team against one of the most talented pitchers on the slate. It's just giving up a lot.
Well, now we're talking about a team that has only 8 functional bats, 2 of which can't be played together. Like, the amount of actual stacks that you can build for the Mets is already aggressively limited in comparison to every other team.
Right.
It's the chances of them, even if they succeed, like if they put 10 up on the Braves, they might just be the filler for a different stack and not a primary. Like, a 5-man is not necessarily going to be at the top of a tournament because, 1, they're not going to have any ownership, and 2, it's a very specific order of 5 that you can get to.
Right.
Tricky spot. Twins and Royals, 4.6 run implied total for the Twins, 3.3 for the Royals. Sonny Gray and Zach Greinke. No ownership going to Greinke. Don't get the sense we're going to talk about him. 15% ownership going to Sonny Gray at 8,700. Are you more likely to get to your Royals or your Sonny Gray today?
I don't know, man. It's tough, but I think probably Kansas City.
Shocking. Well, talk to me about Gray and his ownership for right now.
I think the ownership is perfectly fine. In general, I think pitching ownership just kind of makes sense across the board to me today. There's not a lot standing out as being like crazy, other than maybe Pivetta, who's now up to 6% or 7%. Gray's a solid pitcher. His strikeout numbers are down a bit this year, but still around 23%, 3.8 xFIP. The Royals haven't been particularly productive to date. Their active roster has a 95 WRC plus, a 22.9% strikeout percentage, 150 ISO. But that's not to say they're not talented. Melendez, Witt, Perez, Pasquantino, these guys are all good. Michael Massey, I believe, projects as a league average hitter. Nick Prado is a top 100 hitting prospect. Michael A. Taylor is not very good. Kyle Isbell, I think, is also a top 100 prospect. He's something, I think. No, so he's Fangraphs has him number 7 in Kansas City's system, okay. But he projects to be a slightly below average hitter, hitting 8th here. So the point being, like, Melendez, Witt, Pasquantino, these guys are all top prospects. Prado's a top prospect. Perez, we know, is really good. I don't think the team as a whole is as bad as their to-date numbers indicate.
Would you rather have Sonny Gray or Alek Manoah?
Sonny Gray.
Okay. Wrong answer, but that's fine. So do you think that 15% ownership on Gray makes sense here?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll skip Greinke for right now. And I guess we'll go to the Twins first. 6th in top stack, 7th in ownership. Luis Arias is the highest owned Twin at this moment. Not really getting to a ton of the Twins, and I wish I was.
I just like the value and talent, I guess, that they offer. Gray really hasn't given up power to either side of the plate. 124 expected ISO to righties, 127 to lefties. This certainly, and anybody that's ever heard me talk about Sonny Gray knows this. This is not a matchup where I'm looking at it and saying like, oh, I think Kansas City is really likely to get there or anything like that. It's just that they're really cheap and they have more talent than the Tigers. They certainly have more talent than Oakland, who we're going to talk about. They have more talent in their lineup than Pittsburgh does. Pasquantino started out slowly this year in terms of actual production, but his expected numbers were much, much better than his actual numbers. His plate discipline numbers were really good. Now he's catching up against right-handed. 136 plate appearances against righties since coming up now. 335 WOBA, 203 ISO, 350 expected WOBA, 218 expected ISO. This year against righties, Perez 223 expected ISO, Witt's at 183, Melendez is at 189, Massey is cheap. Prado 185 expected ISO. It's just a team that's very cheap for the amount of hitting talent that they have, even though I think the matchup sucks.
6 out of the 9 hitters at 2,100 or below. The 3 guys that aren't are more than justified in their price tags.
Right.
I've got a bit more than the field right now of the Royals. I'm happy to be there. I've actually got more Royals than I do Twins. I think it's just a sort of easier spot to get to, even if Sonny Gray is not necessarily the matchup I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is for me. Is I don't love a ton of offenses on this slate. The ones that I do love are getting plenty of ownership. Where I'm looking to value offenses, it's kind of just do I really feel that strongly that I would rather get to the absolute garbage in Oakland's lineup against a really bad pitcher instead of actual quality prospects against a good pitcher?
I mean, the real issue, and we haven't even touched on it, is that this is the easiest team to stack in of any team that you can get to on DraftKings.
Right,
the first 2 hitters have an MPE, and they're good MPEs. Catcher, outfield, third and short. Salvador Perez at catcher. All 3 of these guys, even if they didn't have MPEs, are really good plays at their primary positions. We've got 2 more MPEs at the bottom that are at the flat minimum. The whole team is free. Like, you can mix and match these guys in so many different ways that they become just the easiest team to fit in to any other lineup that you have.
Right, which that point is why I typically get so much of them, is they're just so easy to fit in different ways. So even where I'm not 5-man stacking, I'm just ending up fitting in a bunch of mini stacks where it's like Melendez, Witt, Pasquantino or something.
Right. Yeah, like it's always going to work. Obviously, if you're going 5 threes, the idea of getting to Melendez, Witt, Perez as like outfield shortstop catcher or whatever you want to do here is just so simple to put together. And if you want to start working in your $2,100 Pasquantinos as well, and you're going to go to some sort of like 4-4, you can take any other team you want.
Yeah, and right now the highest owned guy on this team is Pasquantino at 4%.
Yeah, it's insane. I got them and they look good. It's not exciting against Gray, but
no. But it's one of those you have to step back and keep in mind. Hitting is really, really hard. Yeah. Most teams are going to fail. Like, you can go to Toronto tonight. They're more often than not, they're not going to come through. Like, right. So you obviously you want to target the best matchups you can, but you don't want to get too bogged down in like Sonny Gray is good, can't go against him, whatever. Yeah, it's not likely to work, but nothing you're going to name offensively is actually likely to work.
Absolutely. Cardinals and Rockies. 4.6 run implied total for the Cardinals, 3.1 for the Rockies. Jose Quintana and Kyle Freeland. No one is going to Freeland. 13% of the people are going to Quintana at 7,800. And I have a hard time saying that people shouldn't, because the Rockies, outside of Coors, are as bad as it gets.
Yeah, they are not very good. Quintana's pretty inexpensive at 7,800. He's been solid this year. Strikeout numbers much, much better against lefties than righties, as you would expect. And you have a predominantly right-handed lineup. The only lefty in it for Colorado is Charlie Blackmon. 19.2% strikeout percentage for Quintana compared to 32.9% against lefties. But still, 151 expected ISO is reasonable. 326 expected WOBA. Ownership, again, just sort of makes sense to me on Quintana against this Rockies team outside of Coors.
Sorry, I got caught up reading a Francis Ngannou tweet that was sad. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that one for right now. And I'm going to take us over to I think the team that I have the most of right now, that would be the Cardinals. 7th in our top stack tool, 13th in ownership. Am I missing something here? Is there a reason they're not getting any ownership?
I think they should be getting a little bit more. Freeland doesn't give up a ton of power. And one thing, and this is true across the slate, it's just like mid 70s everywhere today. Perfect weather on the East Coast, apparently perfect weather in the Midwest as well. So this park is going to play a lot more pitcher friendly than normal, but you still have a 4.9 implied run total for the Cardinals. And there's a lot of ways you can go with this lineup. Goldschmidt and Arenado are both expensive, but both deservedly so. Carlson and O'Neill are mid-range outfield options. If you can't afford Goldschmidt, you have a $2,200 paid-on option in Pujols. Edman, DeYoung, both look like good enough mid-range options. Molina's not a very good hitter, but he's free. I'm kind of surprised that you're not getting a bit more ownership going to the Cardinals here. When you just consider how flat top stack percentages are, it seems like they should be pulling a little bit more ownership when every team above them is getting at least double the ownership.
Yeah, I have double the ownership here of the field, and even more so than that. This is a park where lefty power sort of goes to die. There should only be one lefty bat facing Freeland. That's going to be Nootbaar. I'll take my chances with a $2,600 outfielder to begin with. But like, why is Nolan Arenado 2% owned? I don't understand that at all.
I will throw in here that, the reason on Arenado that makes sense is that, one, he's expensive, but you have Devers, you have Ramirez. Sure. Both of them are not only like projected for more ownership individually, but they're on teams that are likely to get more ownership. So you're getting these parts of stacks. You have Patrick Wisdom on the Cubs. I will say, if I had to guess at which team comes in at 2 to 3x the ownership that we're expecting tonight, the Cardinals are my guess.
Yeah, that seems safe. I don't see a lot of downside to getting to a 3% owned Cardinals team if you think they're actually 3% owned. They stand out more than any other team for me. So sign me up for all of the Cardinals. Sign me up for none of the Rockies.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, if I had to go to the Rockies, Rogers, Crone, Iglesias, Grichuk, middle of the order, but throw Montero in for the 5-man stack. But yeah, pretty tough for me to want to get to Colorado.
All righty.
Yeah, well, Sean V said Freeland isn't homer prone and we need homers. Please start naming the home run prone pitchers on this slate.
Those are the exact takes that we just talked about 5 minutes ago.
Yep.
Well, now you get to talk about something. Rangers and A's. 4.2 run implied total for the Rangers. 3.9 for the A's. Kohei Arihara, which I think I got mostly right, going for the Rangers. JP Sears, way easier to say, going for the A's. Neither one of these guys is getting any ownership. You want either of them?
No.
Okay, perfect. I will send it right over to you then. 10th in top stack, 1st in top value, 5th in ownership. Most of that ownership just going to Seth Brown, as it should, and Cal Stevenson, as it should, based on their spots in the projected lineups or real lineups. I have no idea. Talk to me about Oakland. This is your spot.
They suck, but so does the guy they're facing. I don't even know how to talk about this spot. Arihara made 10 starts in the majors last year for Texas, 40 2/3 innings, 5.5 xFIP, 13.5% strikeout percentage, gave up 2.4 home runs per 9. This year, 72 innings at AAA, 4.57 xFIP, striking out 20.4% of hitters. He's just not good. Oakland isn't good either. So, again, it's not that I'm confident in the A's bats, but you have a 2K guy leading off in Stevenson. Kemp did lose second base eligibility, so that sucks. But he's only 3,100. Seth Brown, I think, is the top play here at 3,300. It's either Brown or Langeliers, who is 2K flat, former 9th overall pick in 2019. He's up, should actually be good. Steamer projects him for a 184 ISO, 106 WRC plus. This is like a legitimately good catcher option at 2K flat in this spot. Elvis Andrus gives you value at shortstop. It's just another team where we have them with a 4% chance of being the top stack, which on some slates is, pretty unlikely. Here, it's only half of the actual top stack in the Cubs. And they're only pulling 6% ownership, but you can build whatever you want around them. You can take your 3 favorite Cubs bats around them. You can take, Cease plus Ray or something if you want to around them. You can just do whatever you want, and you're getting a bad offense that's facing an equally bad pitcher.
I will say that I feel like 4% is too high. I don't feel like the A's could possibly be a slightly above average stack for today, but I also don't need them to be all that high if they are unquestionably the number one value stack. And that's just how I'm seeing it here. The guys that have salaries are guys that I'm happy to get to, whether that's Sean Murphy or Seth Brown. Otherwise, everybody else is essentially free. So I have no problems with the idea of getting to Oakland. As long as this game isn't in Oakland, which it's not, that would be the only reason that this would look a lot worse.
Yeah, like I haven't crunched lineups yet, but just knowing sort of what goes into my lineups, I expect to get a lot of Oakland tonight. I'm not excited about it. They suck, but I think it's just there haven't been a lot of stacks that I am excited about tonight. When I am, they're getting a bunch of ownership, so it's kind of muted excitement.
Yeah, like Seth Brown's getting 12% ownership or whatever in our last run. That's pretty reasonable for a 200 ISO first baseman at 3,300. Like that's the only thing you got to deal with here, basically.
Yeah. In addition to the fact that most of them just aren't very good, the one negative for Oakland is they've just lost like almost all multi-position eligibility across the board. Seth Brown, not first base outfield, just first base. Kemp, not second base outfield, just second base. Just outfield rather. So that hurts. And then in addition, Piscotty was released and Laureano is on the injured list. So you're getting like a pretty bad version of Oakland's lineup and you're losing a lot of multi-position eligibility. They are helped out a little bit though by the fact that they now have a 2K catcher who can actually hit.
Do we have the Oakland lineup yet?
Yeah. Oh, and that's the other negative. Murphy and Langeliers are the same position, and they're two of the only guys in the lineup that I would actually want from a talent standpoint.
How do you feel about the opposite side of this one, though? Targeting against Sears, no ownership. Sears, decent projected FIP via Steamer. Not going to go super deep in this game that I can tell, but 14th in top stack for the Rangers, 6th in value. They are getting a little bit of ownership, most of that going to Semien, who continues to be priced in a way that I don't totally understand. Talk to me about Texas.
Yeah, kind of just neutral on Texas in general. I agree Semien stands out as a top value. He did lose shortstop eligibility on DraftKings, so that hurts him a bit. But 4,100 just doesn't make much sense here. Seager at 5,200, Garcia at 4,200. Those guys are okay, but I kind of doubt that I get too much Texas in the way of full stacks. Semien individually, I think, is the top play there.
All righty. I don't have anything else here.
Me neither.
White Sox and Astros. 3.4 run implied total for the White Sox, 3.6 for the Astros. We've got two pitchers definitely going today. And when I actually type in White Sox and spell it correctly, we'll be fine. Dylan Cease and Justin Verlander. I was burying the lead there. Dylan Cease and Justin Verlander going here. Cease, 10,400, second most expensive pitcher on the slate, 11% owned. Verlander, 10,600, most expensive pitcher on the slate, 16% owned. I'm going to open it up to you. Floor is yours. I see these guys very differently today.
I think that Verlander is. I think they're really similar. The matchup for Verlander is better. I think that goes without saying. But he also only has a 25.7% strikeout percentage compared to 33% for Cease, 3.12 xFIP for Cease, 3.4 for Verlander. I think that really they're both just guys where you can use them in tournaments because it's just unusual to be able to get a 15% owned Verlander or a 10% owned Cease with the type of talent that they have. And just because the matchups are relatively difficult, especially in Cease's case, doesn't mean that they can't just go out there and dominate. These are two of the best pitchers in the American League. And Cease, in particular, just has ridiculously good strikeout stuff. But they are also expensive. And Robbie Ray kind of just screws everything up here. If you just took Robbie Ray off of this slate, and you're talking about $9,900 Nestor Cortez against Tampa, 10-1 Woodruff against the Dodgers, Cease at 10-4, Verlander at 10-6 as your pay up options, then I think it would just be a lot easier to get the Verlander and Cease because Nestor Cortez would kind of be the only thing in the way. But here you have Cortez in a solid spot, a solid pitcher, and then you just have Robbie Ray that is probably going to strike out 14 guys. So it just becomes it just really ups the opportunity cost there. And it makes me think that it's going to, even though I like the idea of getting to them at this ownership, I think that once it gets to the point of, making lineups and trying to kind of balance projection and ownership and all of that, it's more likely that I just, also with kind of how flat hitter top stack percentages are, I think it's more likely that I end up just choosing to go with low-owned hitters and go with, Robbie Ray, for example, than that I start turning a bunch of Robbie Ray into Cease or Verlander.
Verlander, by the way, at Prize Picks, since I have it up, it's got a 6 strikeout prop for today. Cease is at 7. Feels pretty big against this Astros team. That tells you how good Cease's strikeout stuff is. I've got Verlander ahead of Cease by a little bit here, so I think it's a lot easier for me to get to Verlander. And obviously, the White Sox are well worse than Houston and a better strikeout matchup. But clearly, both guys have comparable ceilings in that they could be the highest scorer on the slate pretty easily. And based on our top pitcher tool, at least the last one that ran, it was the exact same. So no surprises there either. They're just really, really good. It's one of those spots where you don't mind any bit that you get of either one of these guys.
Yeah, agreed.
Can we get to bats?
I have an extremely difficult time.
Yeah. I don't really know what to advocate for here. Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, if you want lefties against Cease, that's really all that I could pitch.
Yeah, that's more than I can.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just, these are two guys that are really, really, really good. I don't have anything else to say here. Just play the pitchers. Brewers and Dodgers, 4.3 run implied total for the Brewers, 3.8 for the Dodgers. Brandon Woodruff and Ryan Pepio. Sure, whatever. 9K also. We'll see. 12% owned for Brandon Woodruff at 10,100, unowned for Pepio. Let's talk about Woodruff. 12% owned. Where does he rank in relationship to Verlander and Cease, the other 10K guys today?
I think he's pretty similar. He's got the second highest strikeout percentage at 28.8%, 3.41 xFIP. Bad matchup against the Dodgers. Their active roster has the highest WRC plus in baseball. It's just really similar where you're getting a really talented pitcher. Like, you can almost never get a 14% owned Brandon Woodruff on a slate, but it's also, I think, just gonna be pretty difficult for me to get there when you have such a deep, like 7 to 8K range plus steal. And then you have Robbie Ray just clearly as the top payoff guy.
Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, Sean V mentioned it, just in case we didn't touch on it before this started. Huge matchup in terms of like optics for Cy Young. Verlander in the AL -135, Cease +165. Next closest guy is McClanahan at +850. After that, you're into the 35-1 type range. So if one of these guys, like if Cease goes out and mows down 10 Astros and Verlander has a bad start, from an optics perspective, that could help him out quite a bit.
Also insane that Cease isn't the favorite. Like, it's literally just because Verlander is winning games.
Let's see. Yeah, so the Tango Tiger has like a Cy Young score metric for predicting this, and they're separated by basically like 1 point. They might as like, it's super, super, super close.
Yeah, but is that to predict it or to say who should get it?
To predict it.
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
like
they're matching the line is what I was going with. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, like
40 more strikeouts for Cease. Verlander's gone basically 8 extra innings. Nothing too crazy there. Yeah, same amount of earned runs.
Yeah, 3.1 xFIP, 3.1 xFIP for Cease, 3.4 for Verlander. Cease's strikeout percentage is like 7 points higher. Walk percentage is like double Verlander's. ERAs are almost identical, both sub 2. Not that anybody really cares, but yeah, I mean, I just, to me, Cease has clearly been the better pitcher, but also Verlander probably should be the favorite to win just because voters are 88 years old and they like pitcher wins.
Yeah, in this case, I think either one of them are completely the correct answer for the most part. Like, I don't think it's a gap where Verlander's about to win 22 games and Cease had that Felix Hernandez start from back or season from back in the day where he was like 9-11 or something dumb, but still won it. Like, that's when it got kind of crazy. Let's talk Brewers bats here, because to me, that's the better stack. 12th in top stack, 13th in ownership. I'm getting to the Brewers a lot more than the public is. Do you see what I see?
I think they're a decent stack here. Pepio is a decent enough pitching prospect. 75 and a third innings pitched at AAA this year, striking out 30.8% of hitters. Did have a 4.77 xFIP. He has struggled through his first 5 major league starts, 5.5 xFIP, striking out 25% of hitters, but also walking 16.5%. There is certainly plenty of upside for the Brewers here. 4.2 implied run total is pretty reasonable on this slate, especially given the number of good pitchers and also the fact that weather isn't really crazy anywhere. So I do agree with you that Milwaukee is a little bit more appealing, I think, than the field's giving them credit for.
I just like the park from a home run perspective. Want to take my chances on some of the power in this lineup. A lot of 200 ISO type peeps. So Brewers are one of those teams that aren't getting any ownership that I would like to take a pretty healthy stand on. Do you want to get to the Dodgers here? I mean, normally it feels okay, but against Woodruff, I don't really see it.
Yeah, I don't really see it either. You can just throw them in there with like the Astros and to a lesser extent the Yankees, where it's kind of just like you're never wrong in the sense that if you did it every single slate against no matter who they're facing, they're gonna come through often enough. But there's just spots that I get to first.
All righty. Angels and Mariners, 3.3 run implied total for the Angels, 4.3 for the Mariners. We're not going to really talk about Jose Suarez at 7K. If you want to get a little bit of it, go for it. We don't even really need to talk about Robbie Ray. He's 9,500. He's projected for 44% ownership. And honestly, that might be too low.
Yeah, it's just, he's really good from a strikeout standpoint. 28% strikeout percentage is third highest on the slate. 3.51 xFIP is really good. The only real negative is that he allows nearly 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. But even that, he's only allowed a 143 expected ISO to righties compared to a 191 actual ISO. 144 expected ISO to lefties compared to a 211 actual ISO. 26.5% strikeout percentage against righties. 34.5% against lefties. It's a predominantly right-handed lineup. Only 3 lefties with Ohtani, Sierra, and Duggar, but 4, Jared Walsh also. So a pretty balanced lineup here, and just tons and tons and tons of strikeouts, where every other good strikeout pitcher on the slate is in a pretty bad spot, basically. So it's just a spot where I fully expect to get a lot of Robbie Ray.
Yeah, between the fact that it's basically the best strikeout matchup on the slate, a terrible offense, and he just mows people down, it's more than justified ownership. Love it. I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. I've got him projected as the highest scoring pitcher by 2 fantasy points, and he's the 6th most expensive. So you're just going to get to that guy all the time. Yep. Do you want any Suarez?
No. 7K price tag. He's got a relatively difficult matchup against the Mariners. He's an okay strikeout pitcher at 21%, but 4.6 xFIP, 10.5% walk percentage. I certainly prefer getting to the Mariners side.
Let's talk about that Mariners side. 5th in top stack, 8th in ownership. Most of that going to Rodriguez and Haniger, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Do you like that Mariners stack today?
Yeah, I like it that Haniger's back, Rodriguez is back. It really makes this lineup just look better. Suarez, a 175 expected ISO to righties this year, 323 expected WOBA. He's okay, and the park isn't great for hitting. But again, the park factor isn't as important to me when every East Coast and Midwest park is playing in 75-degree weather instead of 90 and humid. So I think they look pretty appealing. Right now we have them with 6% projected ownership, 6% chance of being the top stack. Rodriguez at 5,500 is always a very high upside option. Haniger probably a bit underpriced at 3,900. Suarez and France both have power, and then you can kind of just throw in one more guy.
We're not going to the Angels, right?
Yeah, no.
Now we close it out. By the way, everybody, hit that like button. 950 people here, 162 likes. I haven't asked for most of this show. Can we get that up to 200 before we get out of here? 38 more likes to go before we turn it over to Live Before Lock. Jacob Junis and Merrill Kelly going in this one for the Giants and Diamondbacks, respectively. Basically, both teams have a 4-run implied total. No one's going to Junis. No one's going to Kelly, 9,600. Do you expect to get to either one of these pitchers?
No, I don't. Junis just not somebody that I expect to get to today. Kelly, I think, is a solid enough pitcher. The issue is just he has a 20.8% strikeout percentage, 3.94 xFIP. He's in a good park. All of that is fine, other than the strikeout percentage being a bit below average. But the comparison that I made today was kind of just that on the show this morning. Kelly is like DraftKings used the 2018 pricing algorithm for him, and then they used the 2022 one for every other pitcher. So if this were 2018 and you had, all of those aces at 11 to 12K, and then you throw Merrill Kelly in there at 9,600, you can make a pretty strong case for him because you'd be getting a discount in an okay spot in a good park. But here it's just like if you give me 45-1 odds on Kelly versus Ray, just obviously I would take that, but you're not making DFS lineups by trying to just like make the highest paying parlay that you could.
Right.
You're trying to actually make relatively good projected lineups. So it's just that realistically, I'm going to find spots to pivot ownership before I go from Robbie Ray against the Angels to a $100 more expensive Merrill Kelly against the Giants.
What I do think is safe here is that we're not going to either side of this for a bat.
Yeah, I don't really see that either. The Diamondbacks have gotten relatively expensive, particularly the guys that you would want to get to. Varsho, Rojas, and Walker, all 5K plus. Alec Thomas is hitting 6th instead of 2nd, and he's become more expensive. And then on the other side, Kelly is a pretty solid pitcher. 3,200 for Belt, 2,700 for Wade are decent values. 3,300 for Yastrzemski as well. But I doubt I get to much hitting here. If I do, I think I actually probably get to the Giants a little bit more.
Favorite pitchers?
Robbie Ray times like a million. Plesac, even though I don't love the ownership. Steele, I really like the price tag there. I like Pivetta in tournaments.
Favorite stacks?
Toronto, Cubs, Kansas City, Oakland.
There we go, everybody. Another deeper dive in the books. And thank you guys for listening. Got it up to 200 likes on our way out the door. So thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Good luck tonight. Live Before Lock is next. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here on this stream. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
All right, it's that time. Once again, what's up, everybody? Ben Reza here for OddsShopper, bringing you my best bet of the day. It is Tuesday, August 16th in the sports world. We're going to talk a little about what happened last night. BetMGM's great risk-free offer, and then get into my best bet across the sports world. Let's start with what happened last night. If you watched my video yesterday, you were on the Chicago Cubs first 5 and through 5 innings. Well, I shouldn't say through 5, but through 4.5. We looked great, 3-0. Bottom of the 5th, they collapsed. They gave up 4 runs. That happens. Listen, we caught a lot of good breaks throughout the year. That was a terrible beat. There's no doubt about it. They had multiple chances to get out of that inning, but if you're doing the right things, you get on top of these games and you get chances to get unlucky. Unfortunately, that's what happened last night. Really happy with that bet. We turn the page. We move on. If you are hopping in for the first time and you didn't have the Cubs, well, this is a great time to join the channel. Welcome aboard. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We have so much content across the board, from baseball to football to NASCAR to tennis to college football, whatever you want, we have here. And we also have the risk-free offer, a way to make money on your money with BetMGM. Promo code BensBet, or just go to the description. It's pinned to the comments. What you want to do if you're a new user, if you've been thinking about doing this, telling you now is the time. Sign up, deposit, and you're going to get that risk-free bet of up to $1,000. You don't have to deposit $1,000. You could do less. You get less for the risk-free bet, but you still get that value. You take a shot, try to double that money, and if you miss, you get your money back in free bets. No reason not to do that. But let's talk about where we're going tonight. Going straight deja vu. And I am running it back, as they say. You see it on the screen.
What is going on, everybody? It is time for a little Stokastic MLB Live Before Lock. We're sponsored by OddsShopper today. A lot of suspense. People want to know, who am I doing the show with today? It's Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS over on Twitter. Eric is still away. He is missing at an undisclosed location. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody's heard from him. If you guys have seen him, he's old. He often gets lost. He doesn't always know where he is. Contact the local authorities if you do spot him. But Neil, until then, you're joining me tonight. What's going on, man?
A little bit sad right now, Greg, because by the time this show is over, most likely my dog is going to be at my in-laws' house. We're going on vacation tomorrow, going to Michigan for a week, and my dog is not going to come with us. And it makes me sad only because he has major separation anxiety. We got him as an adult. We don't know what his backstory is, so we don't know what kind of trauma he's been through in his life, but he hates being anywhere other than home with me and my wife. Doesn't want anybody else here, doesn't want to go anywhere else. So I know he's going to be sad. So then it gives me separation anxiety, knowing that he has separation anxiety. But hopefully I can put on a strong face for the rest of the show.
So humble brag there, because I asked you how you're doing. You're like, oh, I'm going on vacation. I'm very upset. Listen, Neil just started working here. I've been here for I don't know how long. I haven't taken one vacation, although that's also partly because I don't like to go anywhere, like at all. So I have not. It also, you're married, I'm not, which also plays a factor. I'm sure if you weren't married, there'd be much less vacations taken. But for me, yeah, like I have not taken a vacation really ever, other than to go to like family stuff back.
The trick is to schedule the vacation before you take the job. So you start the job and you're like, oh, I've got these 3 vacations coming up, which is actually the case for me. I had 3 vacations scheduled when I took the Stokastic job. So yeah, have a lot of off time coming up, and then probably nothing for a long time, for what it's worth.
Yeah. Football coming up, so that's going to keep all of us busy. And then, of course, basketball starting right on the heels of it. Guys, do us favors. You come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, if you guys have any questions at all about tonight's slate or not about tonight's slate, because I asked in our Discord for people to ask me questions, most of them, believe it or not, Neil, not related to baseball. We've got Legalized asking, why is Seth so cursed? And then Seth's follow-up question to that was, where do babies come from? So I think there's some correlation here as to why Seth might be cursed, and I think he just needs to be better educated in general. And then, look, we do have one baseball question here as well. Very rare that the Discord channel would take this seriously, but if you guys want to join the Discord channel and get in on the action, want to know, do you want to know where babies come from? If you've ever wanted to know that information, all you have to do is sign up for a Stokastic Plus Platinum membership. You get access to our Discord channel. As a side note, it comes with, all the tools we have, like the top batters tool, the top pitchers tool, the top stacks tool. But you also get the Discord channel. You learn where babies come from. And if you're signing up for the first time, use the promo code MLB Live and you get 50% off your first week. But there are baseball questions in here as well. Starting one here from GG123. He wants to know Rosario, Swanson, or Witt as a one-off. So one thing that's nice is I'll go over to our top batters tool that we have over at stokastic.com now, and I'll see which of these shortstops end up coming up most frequently as being the optimal shortstop. I do think if you're hand building a lineup, this is probably the easiest way to use our tools to answer these kind of questions. So Rosario, Swanson, and Bobby Witt are the choices.
I've got
Somebody already put in that Rosario isn't in the lineup today. So that's going to be an easy one to say.
No, I'm at Rosario is. I see him in the lineup.
Okay, so somebody in YouTube chat is just incorrect.
At least in Fantasy Cruncher, I guess there's a possibility. So to me, the answer is going to be Rosario. He projects just slightly worse than Dansby Swanson, but is getting 5% less ownership or 4.5% less ownership. So it'd be Ahmed Rosario for me.
Yeah, so they actually are fairly close in terms of odds to be the top scoring player at the position. But like you said, we do have Swanson and Rosario slightly ahead of Bobby Witt, and then Rosario picking about half the ownership of Swanson. So I would use all that information to arrive at the same conclusion as you. I think that is the guy to go to there in Ahmed Rosario. Also, in general, we're going to talk about Cleveland later. I really do like the spot for the Cleveland Guardians tonight. So team that in general, I think makes sense to be a little bit overweight to, or at least get exposure to at the very least, but don't want to get too far ahead. We got to go in order here a little bit, Neil. And we start by talking about the pitchers on this show. And when you look at the pitchers on this slate, I think we have to start by talking about Robbie Wright. He's really the only piece of crazy chalk on the slate. There's only one offense that's projected for double-digit ownership, and it's very slight. And then you look at pitchers, There's only one pitcher projected for more than 24% ownership on DraftKings, and that is Robbie Ray. Over on FanDuel, there's only one pitcher projected for more than 12% ownership, and that is also Robbie Ray. So really the only piece of chalk that we have on the slate. And how are you handling them?
I'm probably getting close to the field. This is kind of a new approach for me this year. I'm just eating the chalk at pitcher. He's 9,500. He has the best top 2 pitcher odds, and he's cheaper than Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, Brandon Woodruff. So it makes sense that he's getting this much ownership. He's just too cheap for his chances of being one of the top 2 pitchers. He is, as you said, getting 42.7% projected ownership with only a 20.4% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate. So that's the negative. He does have negative leverage, but I'm just going to eat the chalk. It's a great matchup. He's a great pitcher. Get different with bats. How about you?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. And I think the other thing too is, well, first off, one thing that's very commonly been chalk on baseball slates as of late is any pitcher going up against the Angels and then right-hand pitchers against the Detroit Tigers. But when it comes to the spot for Robbie Ray, with him really being the only piece of chalk on the slate, it's just really easy to differentiate at offense or differentiate elsewhere because the ownership is so flat everywhere else that I don't even think it's that difficult to play Robbie Ray and just have a different lineup looking elsewhere. And just considering his price on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and he's playing cash games, I think he's pretty much a no-brainer. And then even in tournaments, I don't think his ownership of 44% on DraftKings or on FanDuel, where we have him right now at 33%, it's not especially problematic for me because it's just not going to be hard to build lineups that are a little bit different looking elsewhere. So same for me. I think that he's well worth the ownership that he's at right now. It makes sense to have him in lineups. And then there are still some other pieces that we could talk about as pay-up pitchers that also make sense on the slate. And there's a lot of guys we could group together here where it's Nestor Cortes, Brandon Woodruff, Dylan Cease, Justin Verlander. So we've got all these guys kind of grouped together right around that 10K range. And none of them are especially popular. I mean, Cortes to an extent at 23%. But if you're choosing between the next tier of pitchers, Neil, Verlander, Cease, Woodruff, Cortes, who are you gravitating towards the most?
Looking to me like Dylan Cease kind of stands out. It's a tough matchup with Houston. Don't love the matchup, but he's only getting 11.3% projected ownership with a 16.3% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate. So he's just behind Verlander in terms of odds of success, but getting 5% less ownership. Kind of splitting hairs. I like them both a fair amount. It would probably come down to one of those two. Brandon Woodruff also playing the Dodgers. It's such a weird slate today. Like there's nothing that like I love playing. There's nobody that I really want to get to, maybe with the exception of Robbie Ray. But it's tough for me. It comes down to Dylan Cease or Justin Verlander. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I like them both about the same. Do you have a preference between those two?
I lean a little bit towards Justin Verlander. I really think the matchup is considerably easier for him. And I know that Dylan Cease is pitching at home. There's more strikeout equity, at least in theory, because he's been a much higher strikeout pitcher for the season. Although strikeouts have waned a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But the other thing too, when we're comparing these guys, is really it's this Chicago White Sox team 96 WRC plus against right-hand pitching, whereas the Astros have one of the best offense in baseball. And the reality is this just isn't all that difficult of a matchup for Justin Verlander, where Cease is a really tough one against the Houston Astros. And would this be considered a hot take, Neil? I think Cease gives up more than one earned run today. Ooh. From this standpoint. Do you know how long it's been since he last gave up more than one earned run?
More than one. 6 years. I'm just trying to ruin your fun here by saying 6 years. I got over guess.
You overshot it a little bit, but May 24th, which not quite 6 years, but it's
really May 24th. That is insane.
Yeah. So it's been nearly 3 months since he had a start where he gave up more than one earned run. So that's the hot take I'm rolling with here. He's going to give up more than one earned run in the start. It's been 3 months since he's done it. Like we've seen 13 or 14 starts. I'm not counting them all because who could count that high? It's nearly impossible. But to figure out how many starts it's been since he last gave up multiple earned runs in a start. Now, there have been some times where he's given up unearned runs because defense has been shitty behind him, but it's been a really meaningful time since he's given up any kind of crazy offense. And this is a really tough spot for him. Something else that's kind of contributed to his success, his strength of schedule has been almost impossibly easy. Like just Royals, A's, Twins in there. Okay, that's kind of hard. But then Tigers, Orioles, Tigers again. So there have been a lot of really easy matchups that's contributed to him not giving up a lot of runs. The Astros, this is by far the most difficult matchup he's had in a considerable amount of time. So I do think that some of the numbers I point out with Dylan Cease when I talk about him could be a little bit deceiving just from the standpoint of, yeah, he hasn't given up any runs in a considerable amount of time because he's pitched against, like the Tigers 3 times during that streak, and then a couple times against the Royals, the Rangers. Today, though, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Verlander just because I think the matchup is easier, but we're splitting hairs, and these guys are, fairly low owned relative to what we normally see these pitchers at.
Yeah, they're all, that's true. Other than Robbie Ray, everybody is fairly low owned. That's the weird thing about today's slate. None of the stacks are that highly owned. None of the pitchers outside of Robbie Ray are that high owned. So it's an interesting slate. I feel like this is a pretty odd kind of slate where nothing really jumps out as like a smash spot for stacks or pitchers. So interesting to talk about. There's a lot to get to here just because it's so nuanced. There's no clear favorites for me in terms of stacks or pitchers. Maybe you can find some for me.
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing of these pitchers we just talked about. My least favorite is Nestor Cortes, just because he is quite a bit more popular than the other guys. And I also think he's just worse. I think Brandon Woodruff also, like, I'd much rather roster Cease or Verlander than Woodruff. But Woodruff, Cease, Verlander, Ray, I don't think these guys are, well, maybe not Robbie Ray, but the matchup is easier. But of the guys in this kind of price tier / ownership range, I think Verlander, Cease, and Woodruff are all much better than Nestor Cortes. And he's about double the ownership of any of them. So he's my least favorite just for ownership reasons. We also haven't projected the lowest of those guys. So do you have a feel on your least favorite of this group?
Yeah, totally same page as you. It's Nestor Cortes for me. Man, that's tough because Brandon Woodruff is against the Dodgers, but he has positive leverage. Yeah, it's Nestor Cortes, just a negative leverage. Although I get it, why he's getting the 23.2% projected ownership. He has clearly the best matchup of the top pitchers. So in a cashy kind of setting in a smaller contest, I probably wouldn't hate Nestor Cortes as much, but in any kind of large field GPP, he's just getting too much ownership given the number of great pitchers at the top. I'm wondering now if anybody has alerted the tools team to the fact that Charlie Morton has a projection under 1 fantasy point and is currently projected for 0 ownership, because that might shake things up a little bit.
What's funny is, so this happened. It happened when the Mets new lineup, because the Mets had a lineup change and it kind of broke the projection for a second. It's getting fixed. It's getting worked on. It's being known, but I can't remember this happened with another pitcher when there was a late scratch. I want to say it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it got changed. The pitcher ended up scoring negative fantasy points for this late. So people were complaining. He ended up being over projected. The pitcher, I can't remember who it was, but it was a high end pitcher that ended up with like -4 fantasy points. But yeah, guys, don't worry. The Charlie Morton projection will be updated soon. Another very important question in the Discord channel. This one is from JMO4328. He's asking me, tuna fish or chicken? It's chicken. Anybody, if you eat tuna fish, to me, you're somewhat of a serial killer. It smells terrible. It comes in a can. I know Matt Kajeski, it's like 99% of his diet. I'm sure he has like zinc poisoning and aluminum in his blood and stuff. But yeah, I don't mess around with. I don't mess around with tuna fish and whatever mercury comes with it. Do you eat tuna fish? Am I going to have to find a new co-host?
I'll only eat tuna fish in sushi. I don't eat it outside of sushi, but it can be pretty good in sushi. I guess I've never really considered the health effects. It's tasty in the right context, but I'm not a huge fish eater in general. Which I've been working on as an adult. I go out of my way sometimes to eat fish, and I actually don't hate it anymore. I just don't typically go out of my way to get it, because if I'm at a place where there's steak as an option, I'm going to get the steak. If there's chicken as an option, I'm probably going to get the chicken. So I don't really go out of my way for seafood in general, and tuna is not an exception.
Yeah, we've got El Cuatro Loco saying, you could get tuna not in a can. Yeah, I know you could go to the ocean, you could hunt it yourself, and you could do whatever. Also, I had when I was a kid, my dad and one of his friends went fishing together, and they caught this big tuna fish, and they brought it back to the house, renting a beach house, cooked it, and everybody got sick. Like, it was everybody got sick from it. It's like, what do we need to do with this? It smells bad. It looks gross. Give me the chicken. Give me the red meat, steak and whatnot, hamburgers. I'm not fucking with stuff that comes in the sea. I don't trust it. It's weird, right? There's seaweed there. I don't want anything to do with it.
What do you think of Eric's new nickname, Twin City Eric?
I hate it.
You're not a fan?
No.
Rimpak came up with it.
Yeah, that doesn't help. That doesn't help matters. I don't like it. Jordan, do you want to weigh on this? Twin City Eric, do we like this?
What was your nickname for him?
Oh, I don't know. I might have. I'm sure I've called him. I'm sure I've called him a lot of things over the years. Some of them maybe not for public record, but yeah, there's been a number of things I've called Eric. Twin Cities. That's no, thank you. All right, let's talk about the other pitchers on the slate, and there are a lot of good-looking salary-saving pitchers. A lot of people are rostering Zach Plesac tonight, which it makes sense. It's a right-hand pitcher going up against the Detroit Tigers. He's cheap. It's a little bit too much ownership for me, though. There's a lot of pitchers priced around him that I think are somewhat comparable looking that we could roster for a lot less ownership. Guys like Justin Steele, considerably cheaper. We have a similar projection on him, half the ownership. And yeah, $1,000 cheaper on DK. Then you got Jeffrey Springs, about the same price, fairly comparable projection. And we have him for 2% ownership compared to 20% ownership on Plesac. Over on FanDuel, where he's 7,800, he is the second most popular pitcher on the slate behind Dylan Cease. I understand why people are rostering Plesac. Right-hand pitchers against the Tigers have been a thing all season, and he's also coming off a very good start against the Tigers, which I'm sure is going to influence a lot of people. But what are you going to do with Zach Plesac as an SP2? Because he's frankly been shitty this year, Neil, but so is the Tigers against right-hand pitching.
Yeah, so I would be inclined to get away from Zach Plesac. On DraftKings, I think I'm only playing 11 lineups today. I'm going to play the 111 instead of the $15 contest today. So I don't actually know what exposure I have to Plesac currently, but if you are playing the large field contest, I think that's an easy getaway spot. Not fully. I think I would play some Plesac just because I don't really know who else you want to play in that kind of price range. Jeffrey Springs is kind of interesting, but he's facing the Yankees, so kind of hate that. So I think that I would play some Plesac. I think that I probably will play some Plesac, but if you wanted a full fade him, I think that it makes some sense given just the 21% projected ownership. I'd be more inclined to take Detroit bats against him and just hope that they can somehow manage to fix the ship. But yeah, I mean he's a fine play, but he's a little bit, his ownership is about double what it should be, and that's kind of a spot where I'd rather go to pitchers who are not getting the same kind of ownership and have similar kind of upside in guys like Jeffrey Springs.
I don't see what's on the screen right now. Jordan, could we do, using the player comparison tool, could we do Zach Plesac versus Jeffrey Springs, or were you already showing that before? All right, so we're gonna do a little comparison. We're gonna show a new tool that we have over at Stokastic.com. Really useful, and what a lot of this came from is we've noticed, especially for sports like basketball and football, if we're doing live before lock, probably the thing that comes up most frequently when we're doing shows, questions we get asked, is people will ask us, who's going to score more fantasy points? Should I play this guy? Should I play this guy? Sometimes there's like 3v3 questions and you get one player's often the same on both sides. And which, if you've got, say, LeBron James in both sides of the equation, you don't actually have to include them on both sides. But here's what's really cool about the player comparison tool. We've got our projections, the different simulations we have. And what you could do is you type in the two players that you're trying to compare, and you're going to see, based on our simulations, our DFS projections, what the actual projection of the player is, and then what the odds are of that player outscoring the other player. So what you'll notice when you compare these two players over for their DraftKings price, very similar in salary, right? Zach Plesac, 7,200, Jeffrey Springs, 7,400. Now we have Zach Plesac outscoring Jeffrey Springs very narrowly, right? 51.8% of the time to 48.2. It's a coin flip, but it's not a coin flip is the ownership projection, where we have Plesac is 10x the ownership of Jeffrey Springs. So I would use this tool, and this is where I would look at this and be like, here's a really good pivot for tournaments. So this is the way that I'm going to be using this tool going forward. I think it's also going to be really helpful for us to do on shows. So Neil, given this information, would you agree, like Jeffrey Springs, good pivot in tournaments?
Great pivot in tournaments. People are going to be scared away from him because he's playing the Yankees, and that makes sense. The Yankees are really good, but he's also a better pitcher than Zach Plesac. He's only $200 more expensive, and he's getting a tenth of the ownership. No, I mean more than that, slightly more than that, but close. So yeah, give me Jeffrey Springs over Zach Plesac, despite Plesac being better a little bit more of the time.
Yeah, and then one thing also is, People are asking, where's Eric right now? So I hate to break it to Eric this way, but Eric, you're fired. We're using your salary to build this tool. This is the trade-off. There's no more Eric, but we get information in data such as this instead. So that's the player comparison tool. Just launched today. We've been working on it for a little bit, and really, really useful piece of information to help us build our lineups. So working through the rest of the pitching tier and other cheap guys, is there anybody else that really stands out to you as a salary saving play that you're trying to work into your lineups?
I mean, Justin Steele looks pretty good. He's getting the ownership as you would expect, getting 12.4%. I mean, it's not out of hand. That's a fine ownership number. He has an 8.2% chance of being one of the top 2 pitchers on the slate, but then a 19.2% chance of being one of the top 2 point per dollar pitchers on the slate. So I think that I'm totally fine with what the field is getting for Justin Steele. I would be even fine if I got a little bit more than that, just given the other pitchers in the range. There's not a whole lot to love. Kyle Freeland looks okay in the top pitchers tool, but he's also in a really tough matchup with St. Louis. So I feel more comfortable with Justin Steele going up against the Nationals than Kyle Freeland going up against the Cardinals. And obviously so does the field. So I don't know. Are you going to be playing any Kyle Freeland against the Cardinals?
No, I don't roster left-hand pitchers against the Cardinals for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're really good against lefties, but they're just in general, and this goes for lefties or righties going up against the Cardinals, they just don't strike out. They put the bat on the ball. It's really hard to find upside. And then as is with Freeland, he's not a pitcher that generates strikeouts at any kind of really meaningful rate. So we've got a massive baseball slate. There's a lot of pitchers to choose from. And it's just hard for me to get behind a pitcher with a 16.4% K rate in a very difficult strikeout matchup.
Yeah. Kerry just pointed out that Steele's FanDuel price is 9,700. I had not seen that. That is nuts.
Yeah, it is very
not
high,
playing him there.
Which there's a couple of different ways to look at this, right? Number one is FanDuel's pricing on him is terrible. It shouldn't be that high. But DraftKings pricing is terrible on him also. The real answer probably lies somewhere in between those two numbers. So I really do like Justin Steele as a pay down option on DraftKings. On FanDuel, no chance do I want to pay up for Justin Steele when you could get, all right, so Justin Steele at 9,700. The choice is like, oh, do I want to play Justin Steele at 9,700 or Robbie Ray at 10,300 or like Dylan Cease is $1,200 more expensive. Nestor Cortez, like he's arguably my least favorite pitcher on the FanDuel slate, just based on that.
Yeah, price. I mean, that salary is just outrageous for Justin Steele, so that makes sense. Obviously, the matchup is great. I mean, this Nationals team is not good, but still, he's Justin Steele. He shouldn't be 9,700 on a slate like this where there are a lot of good pitchers.
We've got a question here from Lucky. He's asking, it's a 1v1 question. We don't have the data for this in the player comparison tool yet, but he wants to know Lindy or Neil. So Neil, I hope you understand this. I have to answer Eric because I think his skin is much thinner than yours. And I legitimately get concerned that he would hurt himself if I answered you. So I'm going to say, so I'm going to say Eric for that reason. And I know a lot of people are pointing out that how do we develop this tool for so cheap? Because it's true. By getting rid of Eric, we saved $19.99 per year. But that's what we're able to. Those funds went towards building this tool.
So I guess the real question is Eric or the tool. That's what we got to ask chat. Eric or the tool.
Yeah, and some would say that the two are one of the same, Eric and the tool. But the answer it's the tool. I mean, we could
it's
throw.
A great tool.
We could throw it up in a bowl. Eric, what are you doing here? Why the 3 dots? I picked you. You're the winner. He's still upset. See, there's no way to please him. He's very difficult to please. Got a question in Discord from GG123. Final pitcher question. We'll move on over to stacks. If we have the $600 salary left over, should we go to Quintana or Plesac? So for me, the answer is going to be Quintana. We have very, very minimal difference in projection between the two. Like it's identical, 9.8% top pitcher odds for both of them, but you're getting about half the ownership on Quintana. So to me, Quintana is going to be the answer there. Any other pitcher talking points for you, Neil? If not, we'll head on over to the offenses.
I think I'm on the same page as you as far as that goes. How much interest, if any, do you have in Charlie Morton? Do you do your own projections or do you just use the Stokastic? I just use the Stokastic projection, so I'm very curious to see what the actual projection will be. I'm gonna refresh now just to make sure we don't have it.
So for baseball, I use all the data we have on the site. I don't use anything else. And if memory serves correct, because we don't have the tools updated for Morton yet, he's probably going to be projected a little slightly less ownership than Nestor Cortes, like right in between Verlander and Cortes. And I think as of this morning, he was the third most popular pitcher on the slate. It was Ray 1, Cortes 2, and then it was Morton 3, Plesac 4. Like those were the top 4. And I assume it's probably going to be about that range. So we're going to talk about offenses in a second. And if he's going to be really popular, I'm going to like the Mets as a contrarian stack, just because Morton is so boom or bust. You know, he's one of these pitchers who, when he's on, he's nearly unhittable. He's generating a whole bunch of swing and misses. But then these other starts where he's not able to locate pitches at all. He's hanging breaking balls and he just gets his ass kicked. And here's how I generally played Charlie Morton. If he's popular, I'm not really on him. If he's contrarian, I like getting to him because the upside's there. The spot it kind of reminds me of is yesterday. I really like the Cubs against Josiah Gray. Now, the way that game worked was really weird because the Cubs were one of the highest scoring teams on the slate as a stack for fantasy purposes because they hit a couple of home runs. They stole bases off Josiah Gray. But then Josiah Gray also had a bunch of strikeouts, so he was really good also. So it was a weird spot where it was like he was good and the offense was also good. Yeah. There is reason to say like, oh, I think both teams would have some upside. But based on current ownership, I would prefer the Mets to Morton in large field tournaments.
Okay, I assume that I will be on the same page as you there. The Mets are just always such a dangerous stack, and if Charlie Morton is that high owned, although I mean, if he's third or fourth in terms of ownership, he's not actually going to be that high owned. So it's not like we're getting a ton of leverage with the Mets, but I think the Mets are going to be completely unowned. So yeah. I'm on the same page as you there.
All right, so if we have no more pitcher talking points, let's bring up some of the other tools we have on the site. OddsShopper. If you guys are betting on sports, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not checking out OddsShopper, at the very least, because it's going to give you the best way possible to compare different odds at different books. You know, you never want to bet a pitcher for over 6.5 strikeouts when it's available at 5.5 somewhere else. So always check out OddsShopper and just make sure that you're getting yourself the absolute best bet on the board. One that stands out to me for today, although the odds have moved since I bet it this morning, Nestor Cortes under 6.5 strikeouts. I bet Garrett Cole under 9.5 strikeouts yesterday because of the tools over at OddsShopper, and that was a winner that won fairly easily. And with Nestor Cortes today, his over under 6.5 strikeouts, it was juiced towards the over earlier in the day. Now it's juiced towards the under. So have lost some of the value that was available earlier, but still, I think Nestor Cortes is far more likely to be at 6 or less strikeouts than he is to be at 7 or more. We have him projected for 5.7 today. So Nestor Cortes under 6.5 strikeouts is a bet that I like using the tools over at OddsShopper. But let's move on over to the offenses now. And, you know, you and I were talking about this a little bit before the show started, and it's a really weird slate for offense. I'm going to refresh the ownership to see where it's at now, but we've got the Cubs projected for right at 10% ownership on the dot over on DraftKings, and Top Stacks tool is free to use today, guys. So if you guys want to pull that up over at Stokastic.com and follow along with us, I'll post that in chat right here. And then over on FanDuel, we've got the Blue Jays at 11% ownership, the Cubs at 11% ownership. How do you approach offense on a slate like this, Neil, where it's so flat? There's no crazy chalk. There's no Coors Field game that's picking up 25% ownership. It's really a thing where if you're playing an offense you like, or there's one offense that really stands out to you, chances are they don't have all that crazy of ownership. How does it impact your builds?
So I think I condense more in the middle on slates like this. So I don't think I'm going to get a ton of the Cubs. I'm not going to probably match the field there just because they are getting a good amount of ownership. But teams like Cleveland, you mentioned them earlier. They were I hand built one lineup and a Cleveland 5-man stack was how I built it, because even though they have slight negative leverage in the Top Stacks tool, it's only 6.8% projected ownership. They're just kind of middling there. And I feel like there are a lot of teams right in the middle there. The Twins look pretty good, getting only 6.4% projected ownership. St. Louis against Kyle Friedland. So I think in general, I'm still not targeting teams against the best pitchers. I'm not going to be playing the White Sox against Verlander. I'm not going to be playing the Angels against Robbie Ray, the Rays against Nestor Cortes. I'm more just going to focus on teams in the middle, because I don't think any teams kind of in the middle of the Top Stacks tool are going to get steamed. Like, we're not going to be surprised and see St. Louis suddenly get 15% ownership as a stack. So I think typically on slates like this, where it's really hard to find teams that you love to play, I'm just more likely to go for teams that are in pretty good matchups and kind of have middling top stack odds. It's a tough kind of nut to crack here. Do you have a different approach?
It's hard because we just see so few slates that kind of look like this. I will say that, as much as ownership is, a little bit less problematic than normal, I would be less inclined to just totally load up on all of the chalk at pitching. Like if you're going Plesac and Ray, and then you're playing a Blue Jay stack, for instance, that's a lineup that a lot of people are playing. That's where I'd be maybe a little bit more ownership conscious. But if you're playing somebody like Justin Steele, or before we talked about Jeffrey Springs being a good pivot off of Plesac, if you're playing one of those guys, I just don't think that you really have to be too concerned about what you're doing at offense. So let's say you really want to play the Cubs against Patrick Corbin, more than reasonable. I think that you could do that and differentiate the lineup super easily by just playing either a pitcher who isn't Robbie Ray at the high end, so either Cease or Verlander instead of him, or on the low end, instead of going to like Plesac, you roster a Justin Steele, or you play somebody like Jeffrey Springs, Jose Quintana, and then you kind of have the difference there. So to borrow from your friend and our friend Blender, this is really one of those slates where you could play whoever you want because the ownership is so spread out. There's nothing I would consider to be problematic at offense. So with that in mind, I do want to ask you, if you could only play one offense today, what would be the team that you'd gravitate towards?
I could only play one offense. So we're talking like single entry.
Yep.
Probably Seattle. I just said that I built one lineup and it was Cleveland. Cleveland is up there in this matchup with Garrett Hill. It's just such a good explosion kind of spot. They do have slight negative leverage. So just based on the top stacks, so I think I have to go away from them. The Dodgers are interesting, but they have a tough matchup against Brandon Woodruff. The only reason to play them is because they are the Dodgers and they can hit anybody. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Seattle, which just this goes back to how I build when I talk about single entry. It's the first team that I see with actually Boston has positive leverage against Mitch Keller, but I think it's Seattle for me. Probably Seattle against Jose Suarez. And then you also get a little bit of positive correlation if you want to play Robbie Ray in that lineup too. He's more likely to get a win if the Seattle offense does well. So if you build a Seattle stack with Robbie Ray, I think that's probably the first place I would go. Do you see things differently?
I don't mind them. I am leaning towards the Toronto Blue Jays right now. And also, I have a big family dinner after this. It's meatball night. My sister goes to college tomorrow. So I can't play like normal, like 20 or 150 lineups or anything like that because I'm going to be out at dinner. And if something happens where there's a lineup change, I'll be screwed. I can't change it. So
yeah, that's a tough spot.
Yeah. So I'm only going to be playing one lineup today. And I have a bunch of different lineup builds right now in Fantasy Cruncher and trying to pick which one it is that I want to take out, go by hand with it. And I'm leaning towards the Toronto Blue Jays right now. I just really like the spot against Dean Kramer. And I just think it's easy, like I said before, to either not go with Robbie Ray or not go with Zach Plesac. And I think I'll have a different looking lineup in single entry. But Dean Kramer this year, I'll pull up his numbers. There was this one weird stretch he went on where he was not crazy good, but crazy lucky. The results for him were really good, but he was getting hit really hard and just for whatever reason wasn't giving up runs. Other than that, he's largely sucked this season. He has a 4.87 expected ERA. The ERA, I'm hopeful that people will just look at the ERA and think like, oh, ERA under 4, he hasn't been that bad. But like I said, 4.87 expected ERA. The rest of the season, Zips has him projected for a 5.23 ERA. So that's certainly not something that would be all that appealing to look at. And then you look at the recent starts for him, and he had one start where he pitched fairly well against Pittsburgh Pirates, but anybody could find success against Pittsburgh. Beyond that, he got lit up against the Red Sox, got lit up against the Reds. That's a pretty bad look. 4 1/3 inning, 6 runs, 2 homers allowed. Got lit up against the Yankees, which will happen. Got lit up against the Rays. Got lit up against the Rangers. So he had this stretch where he pitched, it was something like 22 innings in a row without giving up a run, and then has largely been terrible outside of that. So I am a little bit hopeful, which maybe it's because I'm just applying my own narrative to it because I really like the Blue Jays, that people will be a little bit lighter on the Blue Jays because Kramer is a little bit lower of an ERA than it should be, but I don't think he's good. I love the Blue Jays offense. And whenever there's a pitcher that doesn't generate a whole bunch of strikeouts, is going up against an offense that has a lot of power, it's always something I want to back.
Yeah, same page as you. The Blue Jays just look really good, and they're not getting so much steam that you don't want to play them. I agree with all of your analysis. But as you were talking, I was sort of reading chat, having thoughts. The first, and I have a note that Charlie Morton's projection is up. But then I had a question for you. Are you going to IKEA for Meatball Night? Some nice Swedish
IKEA?
meatballs. Yeah, nice Swedish meatballs.
No. I ate it. I don't know where meatballs are originally from. I call them. To me, everything's American food, though, right? Like I'm a. It's the same. Like here's what it's like to be an arrogant American. The first time I studied abroad in college, and I went to Italy, and my first thought is like, well, there's a lot of people with weird accents here. Like to me, I'm the one who's normal, and like they don't fit in.
Yeah.
That's
Who are these
to me.
people?
Yeah. To me, like I go on vacation to, well, not because like I don't really go on but if I was to go on vacation more regularly, my mindset would be like, why do more people not speak English here? Like it wouldn't occur to me that I'm supposed to be adapting to them. Everybody should revolve around me.
You don't even go to IKEA. You didn't even know like what I was talking about when I asked you if you're going to
I had
IKEA.
no clue. I'm eating regular meatballs now.
Regular. All right. I think most people call those Italian meatballs, probably. I don't know.
I call them my mom's meatballs.
All right. Nice. Just had to ask.
Yeah. No.
I don't know what the
Swedish
Ehrenbergs do for
meatballs.
fun.
They're sweet. No. We're eating meatballs like Americans, and we eat until our arteries get clogged and then they explode at some point. This is the proper way to enjoy meatball night. And also we eat as many as we can, and it's a competition. Me and my brother we see who can eat more meatballs.
Like you actually count them? Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Who's got the weight advantage?
My brother does by a considerable amount, but
Okay.
I get a great, like I'll fast before meatball night. Like I won't eat ahead of time. So I've got more space. It's very serious activity.
I mean, Joey Chestnut is not a very large man, so
No,
you don't really need the weight necessarily.
not at all. I don't understand the physics of eating either. Cause like you said, Joe, like you would think a guy who could eat, 70 hot dogs in one sitting, you'd think like, oh, this has to be, somebody who's a little bit overweight or something, but no, he's not, you wouldn't say that he's the pinnacle of physique or anything like that, but he's not in terrible shape either. But more importantly, back to the baseball slate. And I saw some people bringing up that the Oakland A's are projected for some ownership today, which is true. We've got Oakland projected for 6.5% ownership. I don't really love them as a 5-man stack. I just don't think it's necessary to save all that salary. But I do like a lot of the Oakland hitters as one-offs. And the reason being is I love the matchup they have today against Urahara. And just kind of broad sense, what do you make of the Oakland A's in your lineups, Neil, when it's a very shitty offense, but they're so cheap that you could use basically any of them to save salary with and then pay up for pitching, spend up more for offense. So are the Oakland A's, number one, do you like them as a 5-man stack? And then number two, do they fit into your lineups a lot as one-offs to just give you more salary savings?
Yeah, so yes, I think I'd be more inclined to play them as like a secondary stack or like in a 4-4 stack, because it's just harder to imagine 5 Oakland Athletics all doing well enough to be in the optimal lineup, or in the winning lineup, I should say. But they do look pretty good in the top stack. So maybe I do have some interest in playing Oakland as a full stack. They're getting 6.6% projected ownership with a 17.8% chance of being the top point per dollar stack on the board. So they just allow you to do whatever you want with the rest of your lineups. So I guess the short answer is yes, I do have some interest in Oakland, but I might also, if I had the time and I wasn't on a show, I might try to mix in some like 4-4 lineups with Oakland, just because that way you can get into more bats you actually want by playing 4 cheap Oakland guys. But it's a great matchup. They do only have a 3.9 run implied total even against Arihara, so it's not like they're expected to crush him. Obviously in any of these cases you're hoping for an outlier, you're hoping that they spike here, and they certainly could against Arihara, but it is not the expectation. And it's not like they're not getting any ownership at 6.6%, so they're not like my favorite team on the board, but there are some good pay up options at pitcher, so that does make me a little bit more interested in a team that has a 17.8% chance to be in the top point per dollar stack.
Yeah, by a mile, they have the best value stack odds in our top stacks tool on DraftKings. FanDuel, they also have the top value stack odds, not quite as high as DraftKings, just because TK, the pricing a little bit more, I would say, accurate at hitter than when it comes to FanDuel, where they just have a lot of higher end hitters that'll be like 3,200 and whatnot. You won't usually find that on DraftKings. But here's the other reason why I do think it makes sense to get to Oakland, despite the fact that, well, they suck as an offense. I did bet them this morning for over 1.5 runs in the first 5 innings, because I don't think Urahara is capable of getting out any major league hitters. His numbers in the major leagues last year, 10 starts, 40 innings, 6.64 ERA, 8.21 expected ERA, 6.76 FIP. This year in AAA, he is a 4.88 ERA and a 4.91 FIP. Last year in AAA, he had an 11.17 ERA and an 8.28 FIP. There's nothing that suggests to me that he could get out major league hitters. And I know the A's offense sucks, but it's better than minor league offenses, and he's already not getting minor league offenses out.
All right, you've convinced me. He's worse than I thought he was. That does make me more interested in playing the A's. So, and the top stacks will already. He looks pretty good they look pretty good as the top point per dollar stack. So, yeah, maybe I do have a little bit of interest there. Maybe you've convinced me if the A's are a decent stack here. Do you see Eric's question about why we're not just jamming the Cardinals?
Well,
they do look good in the top stacks.
Yeah.
So I agree with Eric that they're a good stack.
So I think it's a team worth getting to, but I guess it depends what we mean by jamming. Like, I don't think there's any one team I look at on this list like, oh, I want to get 15 to 20% of this stack. And then also when it comes to Kyle Freeland, Freeland isn't good, but it's not like he's terrible either. And his numbers get inflated a little bit from pitching half his starts at Coors Field. He's a 4.84 ERA, a 4.93 expected ERA. Let's look at some of his splits this year.
3.53 ERA away as opposed to 6 at home. That's just ERA, not expected ERA.
Which is going to happen when he has to make half his starts at Coors Field. It's always really hard to project these Colorado pitchers because they're at such an unfair disadvantage, right? Like, their numbers are never going to do them justice to how good they actually are. And for some of it has to suck also. Somebody like German Marquez, how much more money would he make in his career if he just wasn't a pitcher in Colorado? Like, why would a pitcher ever want to sign there under any circumstance? Because you're just kind of ruining your numbers in your career. But even some of the underlying numbers at home this year, Kyle Freeland has a 4.9 FIP and a 13.3% K rate. On the road, a 20.2% K rate, a 3.52 FIP. He's a legitimately good pitcher away from home. Now, the middle of that Cardinals lineup, they crush left-hand pitching. So guys like Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, once again, I think they make sense to be overweight too. It just depends what we mean by jamming.
150 out of 150, I think is what Eric was saying. He's just going to force them into every lineup.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't be, now we'll watch them go out and score all the runs in the world, but Eric, just, we could get him contributing. He's saying Goldie, Arenado, make a shit ton of money. Hey, maybe it's that easy tonight.
Eric seems to know what he's talking about. I don't know if you've seen this Lindy's likes, leans, and locks video, but he seems to be crushing it. I keep seeing everybody on the Twitters saying that Eric is crushing Lindy's likes, leans, and locks. So it's sad that this was his last episode today.
So this is, by the way, for Eric's video, the most viewed video on our OddsShopper channel. And we also have to not only shout out Eric, but Jordan Klein, who's also doing a lot of work there. So those two guys definitely doing really good work on that and have helped grow the OddsShopper channel a whole bunch. So we have to make sure that Jordan gets his proper due, right? We got to pamper him a little bit. So maybe get him another signed Lakers jersey behind his head, and then it feel good. He's got the Kobe Bryant one there. Kobe wrote a note to Jordan. Did you know that?
I just saw it today. I was admiring it before the show.
What did he, Jordan? What did Kobe say to you? What does it say on the jersey? There you go. So really personalized. He seems to know you really well. Damn.
Are you the Jordan it was written to?
Yeah, it was actually to Michael Jordan. Oh, can you put it on? Can you put yourself on camera and show people? Oh, okay. All right.
How old is the jersey, Jordan? Like, when did you get it signed? I mean. Oh, okay. Wow. Damn. Very cool.
You guys are like best friends. It's good stuff. All right, getting back to the offenses and some other spots. I'm just curious. How are you doing on your lineups, Neil? Have you uploaded them? Are you doing well on that?
I have not changed them since we started the show. I ran some lineups beforehand. They're probably going to be shit, but that's what I accept when I do live before lock. I'm probably going to have shitty lineups.
So actually, I want to refresh because I'm pretty sure we have an ownership and all that update now on Charlie Morton. So I want to circle back on that, and then we'll get back to offenses because there's going to be a point that I'm going to tie in here. Charlie Morton now, we got the updated ownership. 25% is where he's at now. That's a lot higher than I was expecting. So Charlie Morton is now projected to be fairly popular. That makes me like the Mets more as a large field tournament stack. So we've got Charlie Morton 25% owned for the slate over on DK. So the second most popular pitcher now behind Robbie Ray. Over on FanDuel, 15% ownership. Also, second most popular pitcher behind Robbie Ray. The Mets are picking up sub 1% ownership on both sites. Now, I know that the Mets are really expensive and the matchup isn't ideal, but we're getting them at 0.5% ownership as one of the best offenses in baseball against a really high variance pitcher that's chalky. This seems like a good large field stack to me. Does it seem that way to you as well?
Yeah, looks incredible for a large field tournament. As you said, 0.5% projected ownership, 3.4% chance of being the top stack on the board, and leverage on a 25.1% owned pitcher. They're the Mets. They're a great offense. They can hit around any pitcher. I'm less inclined to play them against Verlander, but against Charlie Morton, as you said, you teams can hit around Charlie Morton. He has that blow up potential. So yeah, the Mets look great today.
Yeah, I'm liking the leverage we're getting on them too, because before you were asking me what we thought his ownership was going to come in at, and I didn't think it was going to be that high. I thought we were looking at him somewhere in between the 18, 20, somewhere around there. And with him being in the mid 20% range, that seems pretty high to me. So I'm cool with going the opposite direction now and feel pretty good about stacking against him for leverage in large field tournaments. Got a question from Dominic Cubano, 25, in our premium Discord channel. He wants to know thoughts on the Mariners being the top stack today. So I know before you advocated for them pretty hard, Neil. If I'm not mistaken, you said that if you were playing only one lineup today, it would be your go-to stack.
Yeah, and I'm not that confident that they would be my go-to stack. Like, there are a lot of teams that look pretty similar there, but they are certainly one of my favorite stacks. Top 5, definitely. And I'm not going to shy away from calling them my favorite stack. I still really like them. So yeah, I would be. I'm for playing Seattle. If you're in single entry, if you're thinking about doing it, I'm not opposed to it, certainly. Still coming in at 5.7% projected ownership, 6.8% chance of being the top stack on the board. Jose Suarez is an okay pitcher, but he certainly doesn't scare me. 1.38 whip, 22% strikeout rate. Yeah, I'm happy playing the Mariners, especially given the if you can also tie in Robbie Ray, though. I mean, you don't need to, but it's just a little bit more positive correlation there if you throw in Robbie Ray because he's more likely to get the win there. How do you feel about it?
I wouldn't call them my favorite stack. Jose Suarez has been serviceable this year, 4.04 ERA, 4.25 expected ERA, but the Mariners aren't picking up all that much ownership, so I do think they make sense to get to in large field tournaments. It's not my single entry stack for me personally today. If I am looking at the numbers, really, really digging into them and seeing where would be the potential upside for the Mariners, it's that Jose Suarez is not generating ground balls this year, only a 35.6% ground ball rate, and then a 12.3% home run to fly ball rate. So this is a pitcher I think could be homer prone. We saw him give up, let's see, there was a start there was a start about 2 weeks ago. You have 3 homers in a start against the Dodgers, which that'll happen. If a pitcher is just letting the ball get hit in the air against them a lot and a lot of the contact is hard, we'll see times that they give up substantial amounts of homers. So from that standpoint, I could see what the upside would be. Also looking at his numbers, he only pitched a handful of innings. So there's not too much to read into this, but I do think it's funny. In 2020, Jose Suarez, 38.57 ERA and a 25.13 expected ERA. That's not great.
38.57 ERA. Yeah, that's how many did he get through a full inning there? Or?
Yeah, he did. He made 2 starts, and it appears they went poorly.
Yeah. So
what was his
so lock Seattle. 150 Seattle stacks is the recommendation there.
Yeah, how is that year? 8.7% strikeout rate to a 21.7% walk rate. That's not great. Yeah, never good when you have a negative 13% K to walk ratio. Yeah. What else went on with them that year? Well, it was only, once again, it was only 2 starts. The year before, his rookie year, that was very abysmal as well. 2019, this was 19 appearances for Jose Suarez, 7.11 ERA, 5.66 expected. He's considerably better than that now. But it's not like he's an elite starting pitcher at all.
Yeah. I think I saw somebody in chat mention that I think Xander Bogaerts is out of the Red Sox lineup. So I think Seattle jumped Boston in terms of top stack odds, most likely because of Xander Bogaerts being out. And yeah, it looks like that is correct. No Xander Bogaerts today. So that makes Boston look a little bit less. They were one of the teams that I was kind of considering up there because, Boston is a dangerous lineup against any pitcher, and they're up against Mitch Keller. But without Xander Bogaerts, I like them a little bit less.
All right. So only a few minutes to go here left in the show, and I've got meatball night to go to. But here's what I want to finish with, Neil. I want to get a home run pick from you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody you think is going to homer. I mean, obviously, ideally it would be. But the player that you would like to homer the most, when you're looking through your lineups, who would it be most beneficial for you to homer? And that could also be your home run pick. So it doesn't outright have to be like the guy you're like, this guy's a lock to homer. Just who do you want to homer today?
So it looks like I can't see my lineups. I lost them at some point while I was refreshing. So I don't know off the top of my head. I know that I played a Cleveland stack. So I guess Jose Ramirez. I know that I have Jose Ramirez in my lineup. I would be in one of my lineups. So there's one player that I know I have in my hand-built lineup. I like Cleveland. I like Jose Ramirez today. I guess he's probably my pick. How about you?
I'm leaning towards Vlad Jr. He's somebody I'm overweight to. And then in addition, he did homer yesterday off Kyle Bradish. I do have the over for his home runs for the year, a bet that I made actually when we were out in Chicago. So something I noticed about sports betting. I talked about this with Eric over dinner. I don't know if he's still in the YouTube chat or not. Oh yeah, he was still posting in there before. Maybe he's listening, maybe he's not. I might have scared him away. That sometimes I'm mean to him. But
wait, you're talking about Eric?
Yeah,
he's still there. He's got Arenado. Is his favorite.
Oh, yeah, that would not be surprising. He's got Arenado and Goldschmidt, both of them 2 homers as a lock.
Yeah.
But when you're in different states with sports betting, I found out that there are different betting restrictions in different states sometimes. So you might have an account that's restricted in, like I do in New Jersey, and then I go to like Chicago, I'm in Illinois, and all of a sudden I've got totally different bet limits. So I placed a lot of bets while I was over there, and one of them was the over home runs for the year for Vlad at the All-Star break. So I think the number I have is over 35.5. So I'd like to see him hit some more homers down the stretch here. I think he's projected a little bit higher than that by Zips and Steamer going forward. That's going to be my guy. Going with Vlad Jr. to homer today. Other than that, Neil, we're about to close the show here. Any final thoughts for the people?
No, I don't really have any final thoughts. We got to scrub the chat because EMAC was talking about smoking a blunt, and I don't know if that's going to fly in his campaign in 2024. So I have a little bit of a concern there. Please don't take a screenshot of the chat. We're going to have to scrub that later. That's my final thought. How about you? You just looking forward to those meatballs? You gonna smoke a blunt before you eat some meatballs?
Before and after. But the other thing also, when it comes to EMAC, I want to see EMAC photoshopped with the blunt in his mouth, and then also with the shades on. So if we could get EMAC like this photo, that would be fantastic. Other than that, EMAC 2024. This is the future of the country. I know that EMAC's 80 years old. Potentially older, nobody knows. You'd have to cut him open and count all the rings.
I mean, that's a requirement to be president anyway.
Yeah, but he would be the youngest president that we've had in quite some time. So EMAC 2024, everybody go vote for him. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and good luck tonight, everybody.
Good luck.